Chapter 101. Then Li Heng returned to the crowd. Everyone saw that Li Heng disappeared for a while and then came back, so they asked Li Heng, "How is it, can the problem of the nuclear bomb be solved?" Everyone was afraid that if Li Heng came back so soon, there would be no way to deal with the nuclear bomb. In that case, everyone would have to evacuate quickly, but that would mean abandoning the people in New York City, which no one could do. So everyone was hoping that Li Heng could solve the problem of the nuclear bomb. Otherwise, even if the teleportation array was successfully shut down and the Chitauri were driven back, once the nuclear bomb exploded in New York, this defensive battle could not be said to be a success. Fortunately, Li Heng smiled and nodded, "The nuclear bomb has been solved. I found a good place for it." "Where's the good place?" Tony asked. "I sent a nuclear bomb into space, to where the Chitauri army was staying, and then the nuclear bomb exploded in their army. This time they will be in trouble." Everyone was very happy and pleased to hear Li Heng say this. They did not expect that Li Heng had given the Chitauri a big gift with the help of a nuclear bomb. Now, not only did everyone not have to worry about the nuclear bomb issue, they also felt that Li Heng had let out a sigh of relief for them, and they immediately felt much better. At this time, Steve said to everyone solemnly, "We won. Tony, great. Hey, great job, guys." Turning to look at Ethan, Tony continued, "I think we should not go to work tomorrow and take a day off." At this time, everyone was happy because they had won the alien invasion war. Li Heng took the opportunity to mention, "Have you ever eaten Chinese food? My family opened a restaurant in Chinatown, you can go and try it. This is exactly what I want. I want to eat it again. Hey, guys, you can all go and try it. It tastes very good. It's a very classic Chinese dish. It's very famous in short videos." Tony was not only the first to agree to Li Heng's proposal, but also persuaded everyone to have dinner together at Li Heng's restaurant. When everyone heard what Li Heng and Tony said, they all agreed to Li Heng's suggestion and prepared to go and try it together tomorrow. Then, when everyone was happily discussing what to eat, Thor said, "We're not done yet." As he said this, he looked towards the top floor of Stark Tower, which was where Li Heng had locked up Loki. So Li Heng led everyone to Tony's office on the top floor. Li Heng opened the space and took out Loki, who was falling inside. There was a loud clang and Loki fell heavily to the ground. Finally, he returned to the ground from the weightless fall. Loki was glad that the ordeal had finally stopped and he didn't have to continue falling. Loki struggled to climb forward a few times, came to the side of the stairs, and then turned over and sat up with the help of the stairs. At this time, Loki found something wrong. He felt that there should be several people standing in front of him, looking at him. So Loki looked up, and Li Heng and the others dispersed and stood in front of Loki, forming a fan shape, surrounding Loki tightly and not giving him any chance to escape. At this time, Loki knew that he had no chance to escape. As for the Chitauri invasion, seeing Li Heng and the others in front of him, Loki knew that the invasion would definitely fail. So Loki tentatively said to Tony, "If there is still a chance, I want to drink that glass of wine." But obviously, no one paid any attention to Loki's words. They just tied him up tightly, and Banner said, "It's better to block his mouth. His mouth can also be used as a weapon." So Thor blocked Loki's mouth to stop him from speaking. Steve took the scepter and put it in the briefcase, Ethan packed up the Rubik's Cube, and then everyone took the elevator to go downstairs. Just when Hulk wanted to get on the elevator, everyone unanimously refused him and asked him to take the stairs. When they arrived at the lobby on the first floor, Tony's reactor suddenly had a small problem and he fell to the ground. The suitcase carrying the Tesseract was also placed aside, and everyone gathered around to check on Tony. Only Lee knew what happened. When something went wrong with Tony, he had been staring at the briefcase containing the Rubik's Cube. Then he found a person who was wrapped in black clothes that covered all his features tightly. He came quietly to the side, secretly picked up the box containing the Rubik's Cube and prepared to leave. Li Heng followed him after seeing this. When the man was about to reach the stairs, Li Heng quickly stepped forward and grabbed the man's shoulders. The man was startled and wanted to continue running forward, but he couldn't break free from Li Heng's hand, so he could only turn his head and look at Li Heng with confusion in his eyes, as if he didn't know Li Heng. Neither of them spoke. Then, with a bang, the stair door was punched open by Hulk from the inside. The violent impact scared the man in black. He didn't dare to think that if he had not stopped just now, he would have been knocked away. Then he looked at Li Heng, who smiled and nodded at him, then said, "Remember to return it." After saying this, Li Heng turned and left, but this shocked the man in black. How could their plan be known by others, and they didn't know anyone? But seeing that Li Heng didn't stop him and said something that he should remember, the man in black didn't think about it anymore. He took his suitcase and joined the captain in tights and left together. When Li Heng went back, Thor thought of a way to save Tony, so he asked the others to move aside, put the hammer on the reactor on Tony's chest, and then slightly activated his lightning ability, and an electric shock came along with the reactor. Whew! Tony let out a breath and woke up. When Thor saw Tony wake up, he shouted happily. "You see, I know it works, I know it." At this time, a person who was wrapped so tightly that he could not be seen clearly appeared next to them again. He came to them with a suitcase, put the suitcase down quietly, and looked around to see if anyone noticed him. When he looked up, he happened to meet Li Heng's eyes, so he quickly pressed the button in his hand, preparing to shrink and enter the transmission channel. At the moment he became smaller, he saw the stranger said to him, "Thank you, Captain." Chapter 102. Steve, who traveled through time, disappeared from Li Heng's sight before he could say anything. Li Heng exclaimed, "This speed is really fast. What's the hurry?" Natasha came over and asked. Li Heng turned his head and saw that Tony had stood up again and took the suitcase in his hand. Natasha saw that Li Heng's attention was not here, so she came over and asked a question, and just happened to hear Li Heng's sigh. "Oh, I mean the process of defeating the alien invasion this time was pretty quick. It took less than half a day." After hearing Li Heng's explanation, everyone started discussing and then left Stark Tower together. Although Li Heng disliked Nick Fury, when he saw S.H.I.E.L.D. coming and blocking all the roads around to prevent other civilians from entering the battlefield, they quickly organized a team to clean up the battlefield. Although Li Heng knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. also had selfish motives and wanted to pack up the Cheetorize things and take them back for research. But seeing S.H.I.E.L.D. quickly cleaning up the mess, Li Heng still felt that it would be enough to let them clean up. At least it was reassuring. Then everyone went back to their homes and prepared to have a good rest as they would have a dinner party tomorrow. Li Heng brought Banner back to the manor. At this time, Samuel came over and began to ask about the details of today. Li Heng didn't want to talk much, so he handed him to Banner and asked Banner to tell him about it in detail to satisfy his curiosity. After listening to Banner's story, Samuel said after a long while, "Today is a really exciting day." Hearing Samuel say this, Li Heng lay on the recliner and expressed his agreement. Today was the most exciting day for him since he came here. Li Heng lay there and fell asleep unknowingly. When he was woken up by Banner, it was already night. Li Heng looked at the time and said, "It's so late. I have to go back and tell the old man to vacate the restaurant tomorrow and prepare for the dinner." Li Heng told Banner and went home. Tony brought Ethan back to the villa and just landed on the half-shattered lawn in the yard. Pepper had been waiting for a long time. Seeing Tony come back safely, Pepper couldn't help it anymore. She ran forward and threw herself into Tony's arms. "Oh, Tony, you're finally back safely." Tony reached out and hugged Pepper's waist, touching her face with one hand before kissing her. Fortunately, Ethan saw that something was wrong and returned to the villa ahead of time, otherwise he would have been fed a mouthful of dog food by Tony and the others. Steve and Thor followed Natasha and the others back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Thor took Loki and locked him in a room, and sent people to watch him 24 hours a day. They waited until they had recorded everything that happened today before Steve went home. Thor had no place to go, and he was still worried about Loki being locked up there alone, so he had to stay with Loki. When Li Heng returned to the restaurant, he found the old man who was just sitting there preparing the dishes ordered by the guests for dinner, and said to him, "Grandpa, I have some friends coming over tomorrow, so can you clear the restaurant for a day? I plan to entertain my friends and let them taste Chinese food." When the old man heard that Li Heng wanted to invite friends over for dinner, he agreed without hesitation. "No problem. I'll reserve the restaurant tomorrow so they can have a good taste of the food I cook." "Well, thank you Grandpa, I will help you then." The next day, when Li Heng separated yesterday, he had told everyone the address of his restaurant, most importantly those people in S.H.I.E.L.D. because Tony and Steve knew the location of the restaurant. Banner and Li Heng could go to pick it up, so Li Heng mainly told Thor the address. When Li Heng finished speaking, he remembered that S.H.I.E.L.D. already knew the address of the restaurant, and Thor was staying at S.H.I.E.L.D. for one night, so he could just come with those people from S.H.I.E.L.D. So Li Heng got up early and started to follow the old man in the morning, helping him and preparing the dishes for lunch in advance. When it was almost noon, Li Hengke put down what he was holding and said to the old man, "Grandpa, everything is almost done now. I'm going to go pick up one of my friends first." The old man waved his hand and told him to go, so Li Heng went to bring Banner to the store. Wait until. When they came back, they saw Steve pushing the door open. "Hey, Steve, take a seat. There aren't many people here yet. You're the first one to arrive." Li Heng asked Steve to sit down, and then Banner started chatting with Steve. Li Heng continued to go to the kitchen to help the old man look after the family. Next, Tony came in his flashy sports car, and several people from S.H.I.E.L.D. drove a black SUV and brought Thor with them. Li Heng saw that everyone had come, and then he started serving the dishes. He immediately filled a large table. Everyone was surprised to see the table full of dishes. They didn't expect that there would be so many dishes for the meal that Li Heng invited everyone to. Li Heng asked everyone not to dwell on these things and raised his glass. "Okay, everyone. We finally worked together to defeat the invaders. Now we are together again, so don't think too much about other things. Right now, at this moment, we just need to eat and drink well and be happy." After Li Heng finished speaking, Tony led everyone to start eating. He kept raising his glass and drinking with everyone. They all enjoyed the meal very much. At this time, the TV in the restaurant also broadcast related news. Although this incident has just been confirmed to be an alien invasion, this group of people, who are called superheroes by the general public, work together to defeat the enemy, which is more than just a victory for many people. It's really nice to have them, you know. Someone can protect us. I love you, Thor. And then the aliens just go boom and I love the Hulk. I don't know if this is safe. It seems like the government is hiding a lot of things. Superhero, in New York? How is that possible? Superheroes have to pay for the destruction of the city. Everyone watched the TV news and had different reactions to the various views on superheroes. So Li Heng said, "Hey, guys. I say, why don't we formally form an organization? The purpose of the organization is to protect the Earth from alien invasions and not to get involved in the affairs between countries within the Earth." After hearing what Li Heng said, everyone agreed this time. "But what are our names?" Tony asked. Li Heng smiled, as if he had thought of something, and then told everyone a name. Chapter 103. Li Heng looked at everyone and said, "Let's just call it, the Illuminati." After saying this, Li Heng was the first one to laugh, because he directly took the name he saw from the movie and used it on the Avengers, which created an inexplicable sense of humor. When they heard the name Li Heng said, everyone started to think about it, and then unanimously agreed and passed Li Heng's proposal, and officially determined the name as the Illuminati. The atmosphere on Li Heng's side was joyful, with people eating and drinking happily, but Nick Fury from S.H.I.E.L.D. was holding a meeting with a serious face. It turned out that today, many congressmen met with Nick Fury again to discuss how to deal with the incident. A congressman suddenly asked Nick Fury, "Nick, where are your team members now? I don't want to know their whereabouts at all now. I think, based on their performance, we can at least give them a day off." Nick Fury directly expressed her thoughts. Another congresswoman asked, "So, what about the Cosmic Cube?" Nick Fury said, "The Cosmic Cube is going to be returned intact. Thor is going to take it back to Asgard, and we won't touch it again. This is not something you can decide." One of the congressmen was very angry. He still wanted to keep the Cosmic Cube on Earth and continue researching it. Nick Fury looked at him like he was a fool. "This is not my decision. I just don't want to bargain with the god who decided this matter." The congressman continued to ask, "So, you are going to let him take the Cosmic Cube away, and that Loki should be executed on the spot according to the laws of the Earth?" Nick Fury interrupted him directly and said, "I believe he will be punished later." Restaurant. After everyone finished their meal, Thor prepared to say goodbye to everyone. He was going to take Loki back to Asgard. When we heard that Thor was leaving, we all prepared to see him off while everyone was together. So Thor, Natasha, and the others returned to S.H.I.E.L.D. to bring out Loki and the Cosmic Cube, and came to an open area in the park. Li Heng had been waiting here with everyone for a long time. Thor held his Meowth hammer in his left hand and the container containing the Cosmic Cube in his right hand, and handed the other end of the container to Loki, whose mouth was blocked. Loki reluctantly raised his hand and held the container, and then Thor looked at everyone, nodded and greeted them one by one, then twisted the container directly and activated the energy of the cosmic cube. The blue energy directly took Thor and Loki away from the spot and returned to Asgard. Then everyone left the park and went home. Meanwhile, the Congresswoman continued to say to Nick Fury, "I think you don't know what kind of precedent you are setting, allowing people with abilities like this to live freely and unsupervised in the world. They are very dangerous." "Yes, the whole world knows it, every world knows it," Nick Fury said firmly. One of the MPs asked, "So, all this effort is just for this? A statement?" Nick Fury didn't answer him, but turned and walked out of the meeting room. Hill then asked, "Sir, what should we do next? They have gone their separate ways, some of them quite far away. What will they do if this happens again? They will come back." "Are you sure?" Nick Fury responded, "Of course I am sure." He always felt that although Li Hung said that he would not join S.H.I.E.L.D., everything was still under his control, so Nick Fury had enough confidence. Hill asked, "Why?" Nick Fury replied, "Because we need them." As for the badly damaged Stark Tower, Tony and Pepper unanimously decided to renovate it and restore it to its original appearance. The leader of the Chitauri army, after failing to invade Earth, returned to the universe, reported to Thanos, and explained the reason for his failure. "Humans, they are not the pitiful creatures we expected, they are very strong-willed. They don't follow the rules, so there is no way to control them." Hearing this, Thanos stood up from his chair, scaring him so much that he quickly lowered his head. But he still ventured to express his opinion. To provoke them is to seek death. Finally, Thanos no longer looked down on the people of Earth, because what he said must have made sense, so Thanos adjusted his strategy towards Earth. Li Hung returned home. Only then did he have time to take out the copied Mind Scepter from the space and take a look at it. When he took the scepter in his hand, the system rang in real time. "Congratulations host, you have obtained the Mind Scepter and you can use it now." Hearing the system's voice, Li Hung was still curious. "Why, it can be used directly this time. No need to do anything else." "Of course not, you can use it without any worries." Although the system said so, Li Hung still experimented with the scepter a few times. Only when he found that there was really no problem did he feel confident to use it. Then came a new round of practice. Li Hung tried to put the scepter into the space so that he could use the power of the mind with his bare hands, just like the Rubik's Cube at that time. However, this time the Mind Scepter was much more difficult to use than the Rubik's Cube, which resulted in Li Hung practicing for a long time before he finally found the feeling and was able to use very slight mental power. Li Hung was very happy to see the traces of mental power released by just using his hands, because this indicated that his use of mental power had improved from 0 to 1, and things would be much easier from now on. So Li Hung was always in a good mood. It wasn't until he saw a large number of videos about superheroes on short videos, a large part of which were about him. After all, a handsome guy with black hair and black eyes, exotic style and powerful strength, all these combined are very attractive to ordinary beautiful Chinese girls. They even gave Li Hung a nickname, or a superhero name, based on the video of him casting magic to chop down the giant beast, the Far East Wizard. Because Li Hung used the power of space to cut off the giant beasts so quickly, the power of space released by Li Hung could not be clearly seen in the video. All one could see was Li Hung waving his hand, and the giant beasts were cut in half one after another. It seemed that Li Hung was indeed a bit like the wizard they imagined. Coupled with Li Hung's black hair and black eyes, the title of wizard was directly determined without his knowledge, and became Li Hung's exclusive title. Chapter 104. After seeing the comments section, Li Hung was really amused and confused when he found himself being called a wizard. At this time, Li Hung received a call from Tony. "Hey, Li." "Oh, that's not right." Li Hung was puzzled. "What's wrong?" "What's wrong? I should call you wizard now." Hearing Tony on the other end of the phone teasing him about his new title, Li Hung could only smile bitterly and then said to Tony, "I didn't expect that." Without even noticing, they confirmed my title in the short video, and it's called Wizard. "Ha ha ha, Wizard Li Hung." Tony laughed after hearing what Li Hung said. Tony said, "But the problem is that the name of Wizard is already deeply rooted in people's minds. Even if you want to tell everyone about your new title, it is very likely that no one will agree with it. So, you can only be called a wizard, ha 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 ha." As Tony spoke, he couldn't help laughing again. When Li Hung heard what Tony said, he felt that what he said was very right. It was difficult to change now, so Li Heng accepted it. After a long time, after getting used to it slowly, Li Heng felt that this title was very meaningful and was very popular with people. Just after hanging up the phone with Tony, Lin Yi also called. After Li Heng answered the phone, he asked, "What's wrong? Is there something you want to talk to me about?" "Of course, Mr. Wizard." Puff. Li Heng spat out the tea in his mouth and almost choked. "Why are you teasing me?" Li Heng didn't expect that Lin Yi called him to talk about this title. "Okay, no more trouble. I actually want to ask you about the details of this war." Then Li Heng told Lin Yi about the incident in detail. When Li Heng talked about the New York battle, Lin Yi's breathing gradually became heavier. "I envy those of you who have superpowers. You can stand up when faced with an invasion, declare war on them directly, and defeat and drive away the invaders." After a pause, Lin Yi carefully asked Li Heng. "I think you said last time that I can also have abilities." Hearing Lin Yi's question, Li Heng understood what he meant, and then explained to him. "Oh, I know what you're thinking, but you still have to wait for a while. There hasn't been any breakthrough yet. When the research is successful, I'll call you first." "Okay, then it's settled. You must be the first to tell me when the time comes." "No problem." After hanging up the phone, Li Heng thought about the serum project that had not made any progress. "I don't know when there will be any results." Just as Li Heng was thinking this, he suddenly heard the voice of the system. "Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully breaking through 1000 reputation. The gift package has been distributed to the system space. Please check it." Li Heng, "Oh, now you have achieved a breakthrough in reputation again." "Yes, after this incident, the host's reputation has been improved and successfully broke through the 1000 mark." Li Heng rubbed his hands and said, "Then I have to see what is distributed this time. I hope it can be used." Then, as always, before opening the gift bag, take a shower, wash your hands, and then pray. It will definitely produce something good, it will definitely. Li Heng looked at Yang Qian's gift package, whispered a few words to give himself a little more confidence, and then reached out to open the gift package. There was a flash of light, and the gift package disappeared, leaving behind several small glass test tubes. Li Heng looked at the glass test tubes on the ground, which were filled with blue and green liquids respectively, and there was a curved spiral in the middle of the test tubes. Looking at the test tube and the familiar blue-green reagent, Li Heng seemed to have thought of something. He took several steps back and asked the system, "Is this the one? Is it what I thought of?" "Of course, this is the T-virus you are thinking of. How is it? How come you brought this thing out? Don't you know how dangerous it is?" Li Heng just wanted to curse now. He didn't expect that the system would directly put the T-virus into the gift package, and now it is exposed to the air. Looking at the test tube on the ground, Li Heng felt that his skin would start to fall off in the next moment, and then mutate into a consciousnessless zombie. Li Heng wanted to go forward and collect the reagents, but he didn't dare to go over, for fear that something disastrous might happen if he wasn't careful. This caused Li Heng to directly question the system. "System, please come out quickly, get rid of this thing, and then explain to me what is going on. This is what I put in the gift package, but I can't be sure when you will get the gift package." I understand. You should deal with these first." Li Heng urged the system to act quickly. "Are you sure you want me to dispose of these instead of listening to the details of the situation?" The system asked back. "What do you mean? Isn't it the T-virus?" "No, you've already told me, it is it." "Well, let me tell you later. As you can see, this is the T-virus from Resident Evil, but it's not exactly that." Li Heng couldn't help but be curious and asked, "Why do you say it's not completely true?" "Because I also know its effect, I also processed it before putting it in the gift bag. Do you think I am stupid?" Hee. Li Heng laughed awkwardly twice, and then waited for the system to continue explaining. "It has been processed so it's not as transmissible as it was before and it won't turn people into zombies." "Oh, really? Doesn't that mean it is also a very powerful serum medicine?" Only then did Li Heng step forward with confidence, picked up the T-virus from the ground, and looked at it carefully. "That's right, but in the same way, when the adverse reactions are eliminated, the corresponding good abilities will also be weakened." "Oh? How much has it weakened?" The T-virus in your hand can only partially enhance endurance and vitality after injection. If important organs are damaged, it can ensure that you are in a dying state instead of dying immediately. It can also master the lowest level of telekinesis. What? You can also control telekinesis? Li Heng suddenly felt that the T-virus appeared at the right time. It's just rubbish telekinesis, and the range is very small. It's useless to you. I know it's useless to me, but it can be very useful to others. And I can give it to Samuel and ask him to combine the T-virus with Banner's serum. Then it will surely allow the person who is injected to gain both physical strength and superpowers. Chapter 105. Li Heng thought about it and realized that when the latest serum is produced, it will enable ordinary people to have telekinesis and will definitely be sought after by a lot of people. But Li Heng also knew that this kind of thing could never be produced on a large scale, so it was only used by a few people. So after listening to the system's explanation, Li Heng loaded all the test tubes into the system space, then went directly to the manor, found Samuel who was still doing experiments, handed these things to him, and instructed. You have to try slowly, because I only have so much, and once I use it up, there won't be any more. When Samuel heard the effects Li Heng described, his first reaction was disbelief. It was impossible for such a thing to exist. But then I thought again, this was something Li Heng brought over, it should be the same as the blue pill from last time, it wouldn't be a lie. So Samuel took the test tube from Li Heng and hurried to do the experiment. Li Heng shouted towards Samuel's back, I have one more request. Samuel stopped and turned to ask Li Heng, what's the request? I hope you can make the serum so that it can be replenished at any time to meet the deficiency, which is equivalent to patching at any time. Samuel thought about it for a while, then nodded, well, I'll consider it, don't worry. After saying that, he went to the laboratory without looking back, ready to test the test tubes brought by Li Heng to see if those effects were real. Seeing that Samuel's full attention was attracted by the test tube in his hand, although Li Heng was a little left out by him, he was very satisfied with Samuel's hard work and dedication. He believed that it would not be long before the new serum could be produced. London. After Thor and Loki returned to Asgard, Jane became alone again. Since she hadn't heard from Thor for a long time, Jane had dinner with a man. Just as we were ordering, Daisy came over. I went to look for you at your lab, which is also your home. I thought I would run into you in your pajamas, wandering around, eating ice cream, and thinking about that person, but you didn't. Daisy spread butter on the bread, took a bite, and then continued. You are wearing ladylike clothes, and you seem to have taken a bath and sprayed perfume. You smell good. Jane finally couldn't help it, interrupted Daisy's speech, and asked. What's the matter with you coming to see me? You wouldn't come to me for no reason. Right. Daisy put down the bread. Do you remember those scientific instruments that you lost interest in? Maybe you should take another look at them. Daisy took out a detector and handed it to Jane. Jane took the instrument and saw the data on it, and blurted out, it's broken. I also think so. Then Jane knocked the detector on the table a few times, and Daisy said beside her. That's what I did, too. Then he picked up the bread and started eating again. I thought your method would be more scientific. After looking at it for a while, Jane returned the instrument to Daisy, saying, I think it shouldn't be a big problem. Daisy disagreed, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Its readings are like Eric's incoherent. Oh, I'm not interested in him. I think you should leave. Jane was ready to let Daisy leave first. Daisy left, but Jane's condition was not as good as before. It was obvious that her mind was no longer in the restaurant, so the man asked Jane to catch up with Daisy and stay alone for dinner. Jane hurried out of the restaurant and got into the car parked on the side of the road. Daisy was already waiting for her in the driver's seat. Then Daisy drove Jane away. As she walked onto the road, Jane heard a sudden voice behind her, turn left at the next intersection. Jane was startled, who is he? Daisy explained, he is my intern, his name is Ian. Then, according to the address located on the detector, several people drove to a shipping company. Entering the factory that had been empty for a long time, the ground was covered with dust and debris. It was obvious that no one had been working here for a long time. Only some birds were frightened by the people who came in and flew away. I don't want to die for science, Jane said. But Daisy simply shouted, don't worry, we are not from London. After hearing Daisy's words, several children came out one after another. Jane was surprised. They are still children. After telling the children that she was a scientist, Jane and the others were led inside to the place where the children found something wrong. After the leading child walked to the place, he came to a big truck in front of Jane, stretched out a finger, gently placed it on the front bumper of the truck, and exerted slight upward force. The big truck floated gently in the air as if in a vacuum. It was not affected by gravity and slowly turned in the air. Jane and Daisy beside them were surprised. The child said, "It seems like something is different, right?" After demonstrating the abnormality of the truck, he took them up the stairs, stopped when they were almost at the top, and then began the demonstration. The child held a drink bottle out of the stairs, then let go and let the bottle fall. Under the gaze of several pairs of eyes, the bottle disappeared halfway down the stairs. "Where did it go?" Jane asked curiously. The little girl pointed upwards and saw the bottle falling from the sky. Then after reaching a fixed height, it disappeared again, and not long after fell from the sky again, repeating the cycle over and over again. Jane exclaimed, "This is really unbelievable." As she spoke, she picked up an empty can nearby and prepared to try it herself. But this time the can disappeared and never reappeared. Sometimes they come back, and sometimes they don't. Jane looked at the value on the instrument. "I have never seen such a value before, except New Mexico?" Daisy asked from the side. After hearing what Daisy said, Jane took the instrument and started searching in the abandoned building. As the alarm on the instrument became more and more frequent, Jane was getting closer and closer to her destination. Walking into a corridor, a gust of wind blew from behind Jane, blowing her forward. Jane couldn't resist the force of the wind and was forced to move forward, and then suddenly she entered another world, which was completely different from the building just now. "Daisy!" Jane shouted Daisy's name, but no one answered. She knew that she might have entered the invisible space. So she plucked up the courage to look around. Chapter 106. Just as Jane entered another space, Tony, who was far away in New York, received another reminder from Jarvis, "Sir, I have detected data anomalies similar to the last time on Earth again." "Oh? Which last time are you talking about?" Tony asked without even looking up as he was busy repairing his suit. "It was the time when Thor, the god of thunder from Asgard, appeared." Hearing this, Tony raised his head and confirmed with Jarvis. "Are you sure data is similar to when Thor first came?" "Yes, sir." Tony stood up from the ground and went to the computer to check the detailed data on it. After taking a look, Tony was sure that this was most likely another abnormality, so he immediately called Lee Hung. "Hey, Lee. I detected an abnormal data in London, which is very similar to the last time Saul came. I think we should pay attention to it and check the situation." "What? London?" Lee Hung did not receive the message this time. Because he was in London, little Zudge did not pay attention to such a faraway place. "Yes, it is in London. I think we can go there first to check out the specific situation." "Okay, wait for me, I'll be right there." Lee Hung said hello to the old man, said he was going out for a while, and then went straight to Tony's villa. When Lee Hung came here, he was already thinking back. He didn't remember what major events had happened in London. After thinking about it, he finally remembered a little bit. It seemed that the plot of Thor 2 was basically unfolded in London. Please forgive Lee Hung in his previous life. He did not watch all the movies, but only watched the quick review commentary of Thor 2, so he did not remember it very clearly. Fortunately, he finally figured out the reason for the abnormality in London. Therefore, after Lee Hung waited for Tony to put on his battle suit, the two of them were teleported directly to London. Then Tony followed Jarvis's instructions to find the specific location of the anomaly. Jane came to another space, looked around, and found a stone pillar. There was a red light emanating from the middle of the stone pillar. Then she walked around the stone pillar twice, trying to see what was glowing. When Jane got very close, almost putting her face against it, she could see clearly that the red light came from the particles rolling in the middle. Then, the particles went along Jane's arms and went directly into her body. Jane frantically clapped her arms to try to knock the particles down, but it was ineffective. Slowly, because of the particles, Jane fainted on the ground. At the same time, the Dark Elf spaceship was activated due to the emergence of the ether particles, and awakened the sleeping Dark Elf leader Malekith. The celestial bodies have begun to converge, and we must seize the opportunity. After searching for a long time, Tony and Lee Hung finally found a shipping company under the guidance of Jarvis. Looking at the somewhat dilapidated company in front of him, Tony was puzzled. Are you sure you didn't find the wrong place for a company like this, Jarvis? I'm sure I've found the right one, sir. After confirming it again and again, Tony prepared to go in and take a look with Li Hung. Unlike Jane and the others, they were very cautious when they entered, fearing that there might be danger. Tony and Li Hung walked in directly without any pause. Tony also asked Jarvis to scan the entire company and get the environment inside. Sir, the scan results show that there are 2 adults and several children in the building. Tony and Li Hung looked at each other, thinking that the anomaly should be at their location. So the 2 of them walked straight in, saw the big truck floating in the air, and found Daisy, who was having a great time. When she saw Daisy, she found that she could actually meet someone she knew here. At this time, Daisy also saw Li Hung and Tony appear. You guys, why are you here? Daisy stuttered a little. She remembered that the last time she saw Li Hung and Tony together was when they met Thor. So when she saw the 2 of them this time, Daisy immediately had a bad premonition. Li Hung said, "We detected something unusual here, so we came here to check it out. What about you? Why are you here too?" At this time Tony calmed the children down and gathered them together, then said, "Okay, Li, everyone is here. Let's send them out first to avoid danger if they stay here." Daisy was about to explain that they were here because of the abnormal values, but the next moment she realized, "What do you mean everyone is here? Jane is here too." Tony raised his hand again, scanned the building, and said, "Obviously the Jane you were talking about is no longer here. I can't find any trace of her." Hearing Tony say this, Daisy didn't believe it. She turned around and went back to the building, looking for Jane. "Jane, can you hear me? Where are you? Jane?" Without hearing Jane's answer, Daisy finally believed Tony's words that Jane was no longer in the building. Then Tony led them to go out, and when they reached the stairs, Daisy thought of the invisible thing on the stairs that looked like a teleportation array. Then she turned and grabbed Tony and yelled, "It must be there, Jane must have gotten in there." Tony and Li Hung looked in the direction of Daisy's finger and found that she was pointing at the air in the middle of the stairs. Seeing that Li Hung and the others didn't believe what she said, Daisy bent down, picked up the stone on the ground, and threw it towards the middle of the stairs. Then Li Hung and Tony saw the rocks falling in a continuous cycle. "See? That's it." Then Daisy threw another stone, and this time the stone disappeared directly. Sometimes she can come back, but sometimes she just disappears and won't come back. Jane must have entered a teleportation array from which she cannot return. You must rescue Jane. Tony glanced at the stairs, then flew over to send them all out. Before leaving, Daisy was still begging to rescue her good friend Jane, and she stayed not far from the door, wanting to wait for the result. Tony sent them out and told them not to tell anyone and not to enter the building. Then he returned to the stairs, scanned them all, and checked the detailed data. Asgard. Thor found Heimdall to chat, and the 2 talked about the celestial bodies gathering, which connected the 9 kingdoms into a line. At that time, the distance between the 9 kingdoms will be shortened and it will be easy to go to other kingdoms. It is equivalent to forming a space channel that connects all the 9 kingdoms. After talking for a long time, Thor finally asked about Jane's situation. So Heimdall looked towards the earth to check on Jane, but this time he couldn't see where Jane was. Chapter 107. When Thor heard Heimdall's words, his face suddenly changed. He understood from Heimdall's words that Jane must have encountered some problems, so he wanted to go to Earth. London. After asking everyone else to leave, Tony and Li Hung were the only ones left in the huge building. Then Tony asked Li Hung, "Li, do you know what's going on?" Li Hung thought for a moment and gave Tony a brief introduction. To put it simply, the 9 kingdoms in the universe will be connected in a line in space every once in a while. It can also be called the convergence of celestial bodies, the conjunction of 9 stars, or something else. When celestial bodies converge, the space channel connecting the 9 kingdoms will be opened, allowing people to reach other kingdoms more conveniently. Earth is one of them. There was a race among the 9 kingdoms, the Dark Elves. They wanted to rule the 9 kingdoms, so they clashed with the Aesir and were eventually defeated by Odin. The Dark Elves' treasure, the ether particles, also disappeared. So the Dark Elves chose to hide, quietly waiting for the re-emergence of the ether particles. Then they can take back the ether particles and plunge the entire universe into darkness. In that way, the Dark Elves will become the masters of the universe. After hearing Li Heng's introduction, Tony concluded, "Oh, so they are waiting for a chance to start over after their failure." "Yes, that's right." Li Heng nodded in agreement. Tony asked again, "So what is the connection between this incident and what is happening in the building now?" After Tony asked this question, he immediately thought of what Li Heng had just said, and then he asked Li Heng tentatively, You mean, the Dark Elf's treasure, the ether particle, is not here, right?" Li Heng gave Tony a thumbs up and said, "You seem to be very smart. You thought of it so quickly. You said that the Dark Elves are waiting for the emergence of the ether particles. Does that mean that the Dark Elves will come to Earth? It just so happens that now that the stars are converging, it will be much easier for them to come to Earth." Li Heng couldn't help but praise him. "Wow, Tony, you figured it out before I even said this. You're really getting smarter." Tony ignored the exaggerated reaction, rolled his eyes, and said worriedly, "In that case, does it mean that we are about to face another war?" Li Heng answered affirmatively, "Yes, we must be prepared to welcome the invasion of the Dark Elves. So, now is the time to call everyone here." Tony took 2 steps forward, stood beside Li Heng, looked at the space between the stairs, and nodded, "Yes, we need to gather everyone again." At this point, the two were ready to return to New York first, gather everyone together, and then return to London. But just as they were about to leave, the space behind them changed. After the ether particles entered Jane's arm, she lost consciousness. Then the ether particles took this opportunity to merge with Jane's body, and waited until the fusion was complete before sending Jane back to Earth. Jane, who had fainted, appeared directly on the ground on the first floor. Li Heng, who was about to explain to Daisy when he reached the door, noticed the movement behind him. Tony also noticed something different through the detector, and then both of them turned around and walked inside. Daisy was about to ask about the details, but when she saw the reactions of the two, she quickly followed. When they walked in, they saw Jane lying unconscious on the ground. Daisy quickly ran to Jane's side and shouted her name loudly, "Jane, what's wrong with you? Jane!" At this time, Li Heng came over and said to Daisy, "Stop shouting, let me take a look." Hearing Li Heng's words, Daisy looked up at Li Heng, "Do you know medical skills?" "I don't know medicine, but I know a little magic." "What?" Daisy was stunned when she heard Li Heng's answer, which had no connection at all. Li Heng quickly took out his magic wand and cast healing magic on Jane. Just as the magic covered the surface of Jane's body, Jane woke up in a short while. Daisy was overjoyed. She didn't expect that Li Heng could really cure Jane. Holding Jane's head with one hand, Daisy asked, "Jane, where did you go just now? And what happened to you? Why did you faint?" After Jane regained consciousness, she remembered what had happened, and her first question was to Daisy, "Did you call the police?" "No, I wanted to call the police because I couldn't find you. But Mr. Stark and his men came over and took over the place, so I gave up the idea of calling the police," Daisy explained, pointing to Tony and Li Heng standing behind. Jane looked in the direction of Daisy's finger, saw Tony and Li Heng, and said, "Well, this is no different than calling the police." Daisy wondered, "Why do you say that?" "Because once you call the police, the omnipresent shield will know about it, and then they will take action. Once they know about it," Jane looked at Li Heng and the others, "the final result will be similar. But we discovered the stable gravity anomaly zone, and we can do research at will. Our competitors are just a few children, but now..." Jane glanced at Tony, Li Heng, and then smiled bitterly. Daisy heard that Jane was still thinking about her research even at this time. "Jane, you have been missing for more than 5 hours. What?" When Jane heard Daisy say this, she thought she was lying to her, but when she saw Daisy's expression, Jane finally understood what had happened. At this time, Li Heng said, "Jane, you don't have to worry too much. We are also good friends with Saul. So, the first priority now is to find out what happened to you. Let's go back to New York together. Tony's laboratory is well equipped and can conduct research more conveniently. What do you think?" After hearing what Li Heng said, Jane and Daisy stopped arguing and agreed to Li Heng's proposal. Several people came out together, and Daisy said goodbye to her in turn and waited until he left before preparing to return to New York. At this moment, it started to rain heavily outside. The rain came so suddenly that several people were caught off guard. Just when they were about to leave here quickly, Li Heng found something wrong, so he directly stopped the opening of the portal and looked around. Chapter 108. There was not a drop of rain falling in the prototype area around where everyone was standing, but outside the area, it was raining heavily. This created a strange scene. Everyone noticed the abnormality at this time and began to look around. Jane also wanted to turn her head, and then she found a figure standing not far away, wearing bright silver armor with a red cloak behind him. It was Thor, whom Jane had missed for a long time, who came to Earth from Asgard. After Jane saw Thor, she couldn't help but run towards him, and then an even weirder scene happened. The circular rainless area left with Jane as she ran. Li Hung saw that something was wrong and cast a rainproof magic on everyone's heads, thus avoiding being soaked. At this time, everyone realized that the circular area was not centered on everyone, but on Jian. Then, following the direction Jane was running, he saw Thor appearing not far away. Thor looked at Jane and called out excitedly, "Hey, Jane!" However, what he received was not Jane's embrace, but a slap from Jane. This slap stunned Thor, and he looked at Jane in disbelief, wanting to ask her why. Jane also knew that her behavior was not good, so she explained, "I'm sorry, I just want to confirm whether it is really you. Something strange has happened all day long." "I'm serious, Jane, you." Just as Thor was about to speak, Jane slapped him on the right cheek again, and Thor was stunned again. At this time, Jane asked angrily, "Where have you been? Why haven't you been seen for so long?" But Thor also asked the question he wanted to know, "Where did you go just now? Heimdall couldn't see you." But obviously, Jane misunderstood. "I am right here where we broke up. I have been waiting and crying. You said you would come back." "I said, it's just that the Rainbow Bridge has been destroyed and the 9 kingdoms are in chaos. I have to put an end to the unrest first. If it's really as you said, then it's understandable." Then the two of them looked at each other affectionately, their faces slowly moved closer, and they were about to kiss each other. "Hi!" The sudden voice startled both of them. They turned around and saw that it was Daisy who came over. She asked, "Did you do this?" Thor and Jane looked at the circular rain-free area around them, and then the rain stopped immediately. Li Hung came over and told Saul everything, but Saul disagreed with taking Jane to New York for examination. He planned to take Jane to another place. Then, Saul said to Li Hung, "Do you want to come too?" Then Thor hugged Jane tightly. Li Hung reacted quickly and immediately pulled Tony to stand next to Thor and the others. The next moment, colorful energy columns descended from the sky, covering them all, and then took them away from London, leaving only the pattern of a rainbow bridge in its place. Not long after, Li Hung and his team came out of the Rainbow Bridge and came to the control room of the Rainbow Bridge, which was next to Heimdall. When they saw Heimdall, Li Hung and the others greeted him, and Heimdall welcomed them, "Welcome to Asgard." Thor then took Jane to get checked without saying anything else, and Tony and Li Hung followed. On the way, Tony asked Li Hung, "Is this the Asgard of the gods? It looks like a good environment." Li Hung nodded in agreement. This was also his first time in Asgard, so everything was new to him. He just had to go with Thor to check Jane, so Li Hung did not tell Thor that he wanted to go shopping in Asgard, but went to the examination room together. As the doctor projects the situation inside Jane's body, other people can also intuitively see what is happening inside Jane's body. Then everyone saw a black and red mass moving around in Jian's body. At this time, Thor asked the doctor, "This is a non-Earth substance. Have you seen it?" "Never seen that before." Then Thor looked at Li Hung and Tony, and they also shook their heads, indicating that they had never seen him. "But the surging energy in her body is enough to make her fatal." Li Hung took over and continued, "This energy should be. What is it?" Thor heard that Li Hung should know something, so he asked quickly. "It should be ether particles." "What?" At this moment, Odin walked in from the door, reprimanded Thor, and asked the soldiers to send Jane back to Earth. However, just as the soldier stepped forward to grab Jane's arm, the ether particles exploded, emitting huge energy, and knocked the soldier who wanted to attack Jane away. And Jane fainted again. Seeing this, Odin stepped forward to check Jane's condition, and then said, "This is impossible." Li Hung said, "The things inside her are ether particles, and they are protecting her." Odin glanced at Li Hung and said, "No, it's just protecting itself." Li Hung nodded to Odin and then bowed. "Follow me." After saying that, Odin led everyone to a palace. There are some substances left over from before the formation of the universe. The thing in her body is one of them. It's called ether particles. The 9 kingdoms are not static. They have dawn and dusk. As he spoke, Odin opened a book. Before dawn, the dark forces, or the dark elves, ruled the world and dominated it alone. Hearing that Odin was talking about the dark elves, Tony winked at Li Hung and prepared to listen to see what the difference was between what Odin said and what Li Hung said. Their leader, Malekith, used darkness to create a weapon that resembles liquid ether. It converts all kinds of matter into dark matter, seeks out a host to inhabit, and draws energy from the host's vitality. Malekith tried to use the power of ether to return the universe to darkness. Hearing this, Tony looked at Li Hung again and found that what Li Hung said about Malekith's purpose was the same as what Odin said. He couldn't help but sigh that Li Hung really knew a lot. Odin then goes on to say, "But after an unyielding and bloody battle, my father, King Bor, finally won the victory, thus winning peace that lasted for thousands of years." Then Jane suddenly asked, "How did he win?" Odin looked at Jane and said firmly, "He destroyed them." Chapter 109. At this time, Thor asked, "Are you sure?" It is said that the ether was also destroyed at the same time. Odin looked Thor in the eyes and said, "They were indeed destroyed then." But Jane asked a question about herself, "Your book doesn't mention how to get the ether out of the body." "No. The Dark Elf spaceship." Malekith sent his men, pretending to be prisoners, back to Asgard to implement Malekith's plan. At the same time, Li Hung and Thor finally had time to visit the legendary Asgard. Thor took them to change into a set of Asgard costumes so that they would not attract too much attention. On the way, Thor explained, "The 9 kingdoms run on the world tree. They rotate around the atrium. After 5,000 years, they will be arranged in a straight line. We call it the celestial convergence. During this period of time, the borders of the countries will be confused. This situation will not disappear until the celestial convergence ends." Tony whispered to Li Hung, "Li, what he said is very similar to what you told me." Thor heard what Tony said, and then looked at Li Hung, "My friend, you are more knowledgeable than I thought. You know all these things." Li Hung smiled and nodded, but did not say how he knew the news. At this time Jane asked Saul, "Will I have any problems?" Saul patted his chest and said, "I will find a way to save you, Jane." "Your father said." "My father is not omniscient." Thor interrupted Jane and continued to explain. "Don't let him hear this." A voice came from the side and everyone turned to look. After Thor saw who it was, he quickly introduced her to everyone, "This is Frigga, the Queen of Asgard, and my mother." "Hi." Jane became much more reserved after hearing Thor's introduction and just greeted Frigga. Frigga nodded to her and then looked at Li Hung. Li Hung was about to salute when he was stopped by Frigga. "You must be Li Hung. Sol has told me this many times. Thank you for taking care of Sol on Earth. The Queen of Gods is too polite. Thor and I are good friends. It is natural for good friends to help each other." As they spoke, chaos broke out in Asgard's prison. The person sent by Malekith as an undercover agent began to carry out his plan after being imprisoned. He first took out the thing given to him by Malekith, absorbed powerful strength from it, transformed into a cursed warrior, then killed the prisoners in the same prison, and used his strength to break the prison's defense system and escaped. When the guards nearby saw the prisoner making trouble, they all ran over and wanted to lock him up again. But unfortunately, the guards were no match for him and were easily defeated. After getting rid of the guards, he began to attack other prisons around him, breaking down all other defenses and releasing all the prisoners. The guards outside finally received the news, picked up their weapons and rushed towards the prison. The cursed warrior then came to Loki's cell, but after taking a look at Loki, he did not release Loki, but turned around and prepared to leave. Just when he took 2 steps, Loki suddenly spoke, "I think you should take the stairs on the left." Hearing Loki's words, the cursed warrior turned his head and looked at Loki. Not far away was the scene of Asgard guards and prisoners fighting. The cursed warrior followed Loki's advice and left the prison from the left. Li Hung and his friends who were chatting outside finally realized something was wrong. "It's the prison." Thor took a step forward, "It's Loki." Then Frigga spoke, "Thor, go ahead, I can take good care of Jane." Then Thor called Li Hung and Tony and went straight to the prison. Li Hung felt that he should help Thor at this time, so he and Tony followed Thor's direction. The prison was in chaos, but in a cell separated by a wall, Loki was sitting quietly on the carpet reading. Because there were too many prisoners, the guards gradually became unable to support them, so they gathered a large group of prisoners and wanted to rush out of the prison. However, at this time, Thor came down from the sky with Thor's hammer and landed in front of them. He said, "Now just go back to the cell, and I will not hold you responsible. I promise you." But just as Thor finished speaking, he was punched in the face by the prisoner who came from the side. Thor reacted and grabbed his neck. Then, Thor showed anger on his face. "Very good, you have successfully aroused my anger, so I won't be polite." After that, Thor joined the fight against the prisoners, and because of the difference in strength, Thor quickly dealt with a large number of prisoners. At this time, Li Hung and Tony finally arrived. Well, it was because Li Hung didn't know the terrain and the location of the prison, so he could only find it slowly. However, after seeing the situation in the prison, Li Hung breathed a sigh of relief. "Fortunately, we are not too late." Then two people joined in the suppression of the prisoners. Thor saw that help had come, so he began to walk towards Loki's cell, knocking the prisoners unconscious as he walked. At this time, Odin also received the news and ordered the soldiers, "Send people to the armory immediately and guard the prison at all costs." Yes. After receiving Odin's order, they immediately took action. Odin. Odin heard someone calling his name and turned around to see that it was Frigga. So he comforted her. "Don't worry, it's just a small matter this time." "You have to be careful," Frigga said. Odin stepped forward and stroked Frigga's face. "After all the ups and downs, my queen, you still love me deeply." After that, Odin was about to go to the prison. At this time, Frigga spoke, "It is because of my deep love for you that I can turn danger into safety for you." Then Frigga took Jane back to her bedroom. When passing by the soldiers, Frigga took a soldier's dagger and said to Jane, "Now listen carefully, no matter what I say, you must do it and not disobey." "Okay, ma'am." Odin brought a large number of soldiers to the prison, ready to suppress the chaos by force and put an end to the chaos in the prison as soon as possible. Chapter 110. In the universe outside Asgard, the Dark Elves' spaceships had quietly reached the vicinity of the Rainbow Bridge, and while being invisible, they flew towards Asgard. Heimdall, who was guarding the Rainbow Bridge, noticed something was wrong, so he quickly got down from the control console and ran back along the Rainbow Bridge, trying to catch up with the invisible thing. Until he encountered the inclined cable on the Rainbow Bridge, he ran to a high place, then rushed out, soared into the air, pulled out two short blades from his waist, and stabbed at the fast-moving invisible spaceship. After being attacked by Heimdall, the spaceship revealed its original appearance, which allowed Heimdall to see the spaceship clearly. After observation, Heimdall discovered the weakness of the spaceship, so he fell from above and stabbed the weak spot with a sword. After doing all this, Heimdall jumped off the spaceship, and the spaceship slightly turned its direction and landed directly on the Rainbow Bridge. Seeing the sudden spaceship being dealt with, Heimdall was about to breathe a sigh of relief, but he immediately felt a different atmosphere, so he turned around and looked up at the sky. A huge object emerged in the sky. It turned out that this was the real spaceship of the Dark Elves. The small one just now was just used to explore the way. Now that the Pathfinder has been dealt with by Heimdall, it begins to release more small spaceships and fly towards Asgard. Heimdall felt something was wrong when he saw the large number of small spaceships flying out from the huge spaceship. These small spaceships, relying on their small size and more flexible flying, directly broke through Asgard's anti-aircraft artillery, forcing Asgard to send out their spaceships to fight. Heimdall quickly returned to the control room of the Rainbow Bridge and immediately activated the palace's defense measures to prevent the palace from being invaded. But what he didn't know was that the cursed warrior who escaped from the prison had broken through several lines of defense and came directly to the energy center of the palace's defense mechanism, and then directly destroyed the energy center in front of him. This caused the palace defenses outside, which had not yet been fully opened, to begin to collapse, and Heimdall did not expect that this time it would be breached from the inside. A spaceship saw the defense facilities disappear, and then drove directly towards the palace hall and fought with the guards inside. In prison, Thor just came to the outside of Loki's cell, looked at Loki, and then felt the vibration caused by the spaceship hitting the hall. So Thor thought that Loki was still imprisoned and nothing should happen, so he quickly came out of the prison. Li Hung glanced at Loki, then took Tony with him to follow Thor. In the hall, soldiers from both sides fought back and forth, and then the one who came down from the spaceship was the king of the Dark Elves, Malekith. He used a bomb to destroy Odin's throne in the hall. This completely aroused the anger of the Asgard soldiers, and they gathered towards the hall. Odin, who was originally going to the prison, received the news that Asgard was invaded, so he rushed back with his soldiers. Seeing the bodies of the guards all over the ground, Odin thought of Frigga who had returned to the palace. At this time, Malekith had killed the guards, pushed open the door of Frigga's bedroom and walked in. He saw Jane, the current host of the ether particle, at a glance. Frigga said to Malekith, "Don't go any further. I can spare your life. You can't do anything to me." Malekith walked in without stopping and stood in front of Frigga. "Who are you?" Frigga asked. "I am Malekith, and I am here to take back what belongs to me." He looked at Jane and then prepared to walk towards her without taking Frigga to heart. But just as he was about to walk past Frigga, Frigga suddenly attacked him, and the two started fighting. But Malekith did not expect that Frigga, the Queen of Gods, would be so skilled in close combat with a sword. In a few moves, Malekith was controlled by Frigga. If it weren't for the cursed warriors who rushed over, Malekith would probably have miscalculated this time. But with the arrival of the cursed warrior, he grabbed Frigga's neck and lifted her up. Malekith then spoke to Jane, "You took what's mine, child, give it back to me." As he spoke, he walked in front of Jane and wanted to put his hand on Jane's shoulder, but when he stretched out his hand, he only touched a magical phantom. It turns out that Frigga created an illusion of Jane to deceive Malekith. Malekith is furious when he sees Jane's illusion disappear, and then asks Frigga, "Where is the ether?" Frigga said calmly, "I won't tell you." Before Malekith could reply, several shells suddenly came from the side and blew Malekith away. The cursed warrior saw what happened to Malekith and was slightly distracted. Then a blue space gate appeared on the arm of the cursed warrior that was pinching Frigga, and then directly cut off the cursed warrior's arm. The next moment, Frigga disappeared from the cursed warrior's sight. Thor had already rushed over here very quickly. When he saw the cursed warrior was about to attack Frigga, he became extremely worried and shouted, "No!" But what happened next happened so fast that Thor didn't have time to think about it, and the situation on the field had changed drastically. Malekith was blown away, and Queen Frigga disappeared from the sight of the cursed warriors. Then Thor looked to the side and found Li Hung there, Tony who released a bomb at Malekith, and Frigga who appeared in front of Li Hung. After seeing Li Hung rescue Frigga, Thor's anger reached its peak. He then launched a lightning-like attack against the cursed warriors, throwing his hammer directly at Malekith and the cursed warriors, blasting them away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Malekith and the other man were picked up by a small spaceship and returned to the Dark Elves' large spaceship. Thor wanted to continue attacking with the hammer, but the spaceship quickly became invisible and then disappeared. Thor did not chase them, but returned to check on Frigga and said to Li Hung, "Li, thank you for saving my mother." Li Hung nodded, then handed Frigga to Thor. At this time, Odin also hurried over, and the two of them conducted a detailed examination of Frigga. No obvious external injuries were found on Frigga's body, only the red marks on her neck caused by the cursed warrior were obvious. Chapter 111. At this time, Thor and Odin finally breathed a sigh of relief, and then Thor told Odin what he had seen. After hearing Thor's words, Odin walked up to Li Hung. "Thank you, Li Hung from Earth, and Tony Stark, thank you very much for saving Frigga." Li Hung quickly said, "This is what I should do. Thor is my good friend and Frigga is his mother. You don't have to be so polite." Odin nodded after hearing Li Hung's words. Although he didn't say it, he remembered the kindness of Li Hung and others in his heart. Then, although there were no obvious external injuries, Odin still took Frigga to see a doctor. Thor followed them out of concern. Jane saw that Thor's family had left, so she quickly ran after them and expressed her apologies to Thor. It was because of her that Frigga was hurt. When Thor heard Jane say this, he quickly comforted her, "Jane, this is not your fault. You don't need to be like this. This is all done by the Dark Elves. I will definitely avenge you." After they left, Tony and Li Hung found a place to sit down and rest. Tony asked curiously, "Li, did you see the God King Odin just now? Does he know us?" Li Hung thought for a moment and said, "Well, maybe Thor told her about it, or maybe he did pay attention to Thor's affairs on Earth, so he knows something about us." After listening to Li Hung's guess, Tony felt that Li Hung's second statement was closer to the truth. The two of them started chatting casually. In the prison, outside Loki's cell, a man came and reported to Loki everything that had just happened. When Loki heard that his mother Frigga was almost killed, he was still very angry. He didn't expect that the cursed warrior, who had only met once, would actually attack Frigga. The messenger said that if it weren't for the help of the two Midgard people, Frigga might have been hurt. The more Loki thought about it, the angrier he became. Although he said that Frigga was not her mother, the feelings they had had for so many years could not be easily erased by just talking. Fortunately, not long after, the messenger came again. After the Queen of Gods checked, there were no major injuries, just some minor skin injuries. Loki finally felt relieved, sat back down, picked up a book and started flipping through it, but his eyes were not focused on the book at all. Earth. Professor Selvig went mad because of streaking around Stonehenge and was taken to a mental hospital. But in the mental hospital, he talked about the convergence of celestial bodies in the 9 kingdoms. Compared with the real mental patients around him, he seemed more like a normal person. Asgard, outside the infirmary. After learning that Frigga was not seriously injured, Jane, out of guilt, went to sit on a bench outside alone, looked at her arms, and really wanted the ether particles to come out of her body. Perhaps sensing Jane's psychology, the ether particles showed Jane a blood-red picture of Asgard. It was so short that Jane disappeared before she could react. At this time, Odin sent someone to find Jane and wanted to take her to a separate room. But Thor disagreed. He asked Odin, "So, are you going to imprison her now?" When Odin saw that Frigga was not in any serious trouble, he came to the energy core of the defensive barrier and found that there was no way to repair the energy core for a while. Just at this time Thor came to question him, so Odin asked everyone else to leave first and started arguing with Thor. "Thor, I want to go after Malekith." But Odin disagreed with Thor's idea. He said, "The ether particles are in our hands. Malekith will fall into the trap himself." "Yes, he will come. But he can also destroy us," Thor continued. Odin explained, "You overestimate those monsters." "No, I just value the lives of our people." Then Thor talked about her plan, "I will take Jane to the Dark World and lead the Dark Elves away from Asgard. When Malekith takes out the ether particles from Jane's body, it will be exposed and vulnerable. At that time, it will be time to destroy them all together." Odin turned to Thor and said, "You are taking a risk. If you fail, the weapon will fall into the hands of the enemy." Thor said, "It would be much more dangerous if we just sit there and wait for death. There is a good chance that Malekith's fleet is hovering over our heads and we won't be able to see it." Odin did not support Thor's plan. He still insisted on waiting. When Malekith comes, he will be defeated by tens of thousands of Asgardian soldiers. Then how many people will we have to sacrifice? Thor asked the most crucial question directly. Although there was no shocking death of Frigga this time, Odin was still angry because of the invasion of the Dark Elves before, so he answered loudly, "No matter how many sacrifices are made, it doesn't matter. We will persist in fighting until the last Asgardian. Persist until the blood of the Asgardians is shed." Until the end, the two people failed to reach an agreement. They both held on to their own opinions and did not want to change, so they had to part ways unhappily. Then Odin gathered everyone together and prepared to hold a military meeting, but Thor did not attend. Similarly, Heimdall did not participate because Odin ordered the Rainbow Bridge to be closed and he had no mission for the time being, so he came to find Thor. Thor wanted to complete his plan with the help of Heimdall, hiding it from Odin. At first, Heimdall was not ready to participate, but Thor persuaded him and finally moved him. Then they called the 3 warriors of Asgard and Sif, and the group found a meeting room together to plan a plan of action. "We need to take Jane away from here, so the first question is, the Rainbow Bridge is closed, how do we leave? There are other ways to leave Asgard. There are only a few people who know about these ways. To be precise, there is only one." After hearing what Thor said, the other people looked at each other and said, "No way." Thor nodded, "That's the person you were thinking of. Let's go find him." Then they went to the prison together and found Loki in the cell. When Loki saw Thor coming to see him, he walked to the cell and complained to him, "Thor, it's been so long, and you only came to see me now." Loki changed his tone and said, "What are you doing here now? Are you here to laugh at me? To gloat over my misfortune?" Chapter 112. But Thor saw through Loki's illusion at a glance. "Okay, Loki, put away your illusion." Seeing that Thor saw through the illusion, Loki retracted it, revealing the messy cell where he had vented his anger. Loki asked, "How is Mother now?" "She's fine now, but I know you are also very angry, so I brought you something better." Thor said this, which really aroused Loki's interest. Go on. I know you also want to avenge your mother, so if you help me escape from Asgard, I will give you a chance for revenge. Hearing Thor say this, Loki laughed and said, you must be desperate, so you come to me for help. Then Loki asked, what makes you think you can trust me? I don't believe you, but my mother does. At the same time, Thor said, if you dare to betray me, I will kill you. Now I will not be merciful to you anymore. After Frigga's distress, Thor seemed to have changed in an instant. After hearing Thor's answer, Loki asked directly, when do we set off? It was obvious that Loki agreed to Thor's request and was ready to set off. Thor secretly released Loki, then took Loki to the conference room. On the way, he also called Lee Hung and Tony, and everyone gathered in the conference room. Then they came up with a secret plan to bring Jane out, and then everyone escaped from Asgard and went to the Dark World together. After everyone has perfected the plan, they will each set out to act according to the plan. Sif played an important role in this task, which was to bring Jane out from the soldiers guarding her. So Sif took advantage of the opportunity when the soldiers came in to bring lunch to Jane and suddenly attacked from behind, knocking the two unsuspecting soldiers to the ground. Then she looked at Jane carefully and ran out with her. Thor and Loki went to the room where Jane was imprisoned, ready to meet her. Along the way, Loki, who had been imprisoned for a long time, finally felt free again, so he kept talking to Thor excitedly, and used illusions to change into different people to talk to Thor. Sometimes he turned into a soldier holding a weapon, and sometimes he turned into Steve holding a shield, and he also turned Thor into Sif. Finally, Thor couldn't stand his nagging anymore, and there were patrolling soldiers nearby, so before being discovered by the patrolling soldiers, Thor pulled Loki over and pressed him against the pillar. After Loki saw the soldier, he calmed down a little and said, at least you have to give me a weapon, such as my dagger, or something else. Thor looked at Loki, raised his hand and took something from his waist and put it in Loki's hand. Loki thought that Thor had listened to him and agreed to give him the dagger. That's right, you know what's best for you. However, the touch on his hand told Loki that something was wrong. When he looked down, he saw that Thor had taken out handcuffs and handcuffed him. He raised his cuffed hands and motioned to Thor, what does this mean? Thor said, I know you like to play tricks. Then he couldn't help laughing and took Loki to the designated place to wait. Thor didn't have to wait long before he saw Sif and Jane coming over. They met up smoothly, and Jane saw Loki at a glance and pointed at him and asked, you? When Loki saw Jane was asking him, he prepared to introduce himself, I'm Loki, maybe you've heard of. Before he could finish his words, Jane, who came up to him, slapped him in the face. This time it's for New York, said Jane. Loki smiled and said to Thor, I like her. Here, Heimdall returned to the Rainbow Bridge control room and called Odin over. Odin asked him, you said you called me over for something urgent. What is it? Heimdall replied, there has been a rebellion, your majesty. Who is it? Heimdall replied, raising his sword, I. His action aroused the vigilance of Odin's guards. At this moment, a soldier reported to Odin, your majesty, the woman has been taken away. Only then did Odin realize that he had fallen into their trap. So he ordered, stop Thor, at all costs. The soldiers who received the order quickly gathered together and prepared to stop Thor. At this time, it was the turn of the three Asgardian warriors and Sif and others to stay and give Thor and others enough time to escape. After saying goodbye to the four people, Thor took Jane and Loki to find Lee Hung and Tony who had been waiting in the hall for a long time, and then they boarded the aircraft left by the dark elf in the hall. Although Loki had experience in flying aircraft, Thor was not confident in letting Loki take control, so he controlled the aircraft himself, took off bumpily, and flew up and down in Asgard to avoid attacks from the defensive turrets. Then, when the aircraft flew over the Rainbow Bridge, Thor nodded to Lee Hung. Lee Hung received Thor's signal, and then he and a few people were transferred from the aircraft to the Asgard spacecraft prepared in advance, leaving an empty aircraft to attract firepower. Then Thor quickly drove the spaceship away. Only then did Loki understand the overall plan, and he couldn't help but praise Thor, I haven't seen you for a long time since I was locked up. I didn't expect that you would use strategies now instead of just rushing forward stupidly. After talking about Thor, Loki turned his head and looked at Lee Hung, you can also teleport? I feel a little familiar from it. Loki wanted to continue asking, but Thor stopped him and handed the control of the spaceship to Loki. Now, it's up to you to take us away from Asgard. Loki nodded. Knowing that the situation was urgent, he didn't say anything more. He turned the spaceship and flew to the right. Soon, they arrived in front of a mountain and rushed towards it without slowing down. Loki? Are you crazy? Thor turned his head and looked at Loki and asked. Kind of. Then the spacecraft plunged into the space channel inside the mountain and shook violently in the space channel. A dark world, a wasteland. Suddenly, a space gate opened in the wilderness, and an Asgard spaceship rushed out from it. Then it rushed to the distance without losing inertia before slowly slowing down. Chapter 113. Just as the spaceship rushed out of the space channel, Loki's proud voice was heard, "Today." He was showing everyone his role to prevent him from being regarded as a useless burden. And now that he has come out of the space channel safely, it also confirms Loki's role. So no one paid attention to Loki's boastful expression, and instead began to discuss what to do next. Thor, I think we should take the initiative, find the location of the Dark Elves, and then fight Malekith and the others. Thor still prefers direct battles, his style is too obvious. No, no, no. We have to hide and secretly find their location first. Loki prepared to hide and wait for the opportunity. Just as several people were arguing, on the Dark Elf spaceship, the cursed warrior found Malekith and asked him for orders to lead people to attack Asgard. Malekith stopped him and said, "No, that is not necessary. The ether came to us on its own initiative." After saying that, Malekith looked in one direction, and it seemed that he could see Thor and Loki arguing, Jane lying on the spaceship, and Li Hung and Tony standing next to them directly from a long distance. Li Hung watched the argument between Thor and Loki, which gradually changed from how to treat Malekith to the two blaming each other. Loki blamed Thor for betraying Frigga's trust in him and watched Frigga get hurt in front of him. "Did you take action in prison?" Thor also began to find fault with Loki. "Who locked me up?" "Who?" Loki shouted loudly when he heard Thor's words. Seeing this, Li Hung quickly stepped forward to separate the two of them. "Calm down, both of you." Li Hung and Tony pulled them apart one by one, and continued, "Have you forgotten the purpose of coming here? Isn't it to avenge Frigga? Why, the operation has just begun, and you want to start a fight again. What's the goal? What about revenge? I think you might as well just go home and give up." Li Heng's words calmed the two people down, and then he quickly realized that his temper just now almost ended the operation early. Then Thor nodded to Li Hung to indicate that he had calmed down, and Li Hung let him go. As for Loki, he sat alone in the corner of the spaceship, looking at the desolate scenery outside. Earth, police station. Daisy saw the news on TV that Selvig was locked up, and then she took her in turn to the police station and arranged for Selvig to be released on bail, which allowed Selvig to be released from the mental hospital. When Selvig saw Daisy, his mind didn't recognize her for a second, so Daisy introduced herself, "I'm Daisy, do you remember?" Hearing Daisy's words, Selvig remembered at this time, and then excitedly stepped forward and hugged Daisy tightly. "Oh, Daisy, it's good to see you." "Doc, what's wrong with you?" Daisy asked puzzledly. Selvig thought of the battle in New York. Although he was later rescued from Loki's control by Li Hung, it seemed that there was something extra in her mind, so she explained, "There is a god in my head." The three men walked out of the police station. On the way, the intern was holding Selvig's device, which suddenly rang. He quickly told Selvig about it. Selvig looked up at the sky, where small birds were flying in panic in groups. Daisy asked, "Have the birds started yet?" When the intern was about to explain what kind of bird it was, Selvig said, "Look." After flying for a while, the flock of birds in the sky began to turn around and fly back. When they passed a certain boundary, all the birds disappeared, as if they had entered an invisible space. "Where did they go?" Daisy asked, looking around but finding no sign of the birds. "Ah! Ah! Ah!" The next moment, flocks of birds rushed out from under her and their feet, carrying a few people with them and flying into the sky again. Daisy was startled by the sudden appearance of the flock of birds. She quickly held her head and bent down to avoid the flock. The intern was also frightened. Only Selvig looked at the flock of birds flying away with great interest, with a smile on his lips. "What is this?" Daisy was annoyed, then she turned around and saw the smile on Selvig's face. "What are you laughing at? I found that this world is even crazier than I thought. This makes me feel at ease." Selvig walked towards the road and told Daisy, take me to Jane's laboratory. Dark World. After Li Heng's persuasion, Thor and Loki finally stopped arguing and agreed to Li Heng's suggestion that we should first find Malkitha's location and not wait for him to find us, otherwise we would be in a passive position. We should find Malkith ahead of time so that we can plan how to fight. It won't be too difficult if we plan carefully. Of course, if a sneak attack fails, we can just go ahead and force the fight. Li Heng looked at the men and said, I think our fighting power shouldn't be a big problem. Tony nodded, indicating that he had a lot of energy with him, so Li Heng didn't need to worry. So Thor drove the spaceship out of the space channel and headed in one direction. After a while, Jane, who was lying unconscious at the stern, finally woke up. But the first thing she did after waking up was not to talk to Thor, but to climb up the side of the ship and look towards the front of the spaceship. Everyone looked in the direction she was looking. In the dark and gloomy sky in the distance, as the spaceship approached, a large dark elf spaceship hidden in the clouds appeared. When she saw the spaceship, Jane directly revealed its origin, Malkith. No one expected that the direction originally chosen randomly would coincidentally lead to Malkitha's location. So in order to be careful not to attract attention, everyone got off the spaceship and prepared to walk forward, slowly moving to the side of the dark elf spaceship. So Thor supported Jane, and the others led the way. After crossing several mountains, they saw Malkitha's spaceship landed on a plain. And Malkith has already walked out with the cursed warriors and some of his men, and his target is Li Heng and his men. Chapter 114. Seeing Malkitha's actions, Li Heng said to Thor and Jane, Ha, it seems that he can also sense your position, so we have to face Malkith head-on. Are you ready? Loki replied, I'm ready. Then they looked at each other and told Jane to stay where she was. They stood up from the hillside and faced Malkith. However, Loki was ready to act with everyone, but he still complained to Thor, this plan will kill us. Thor answered him, maybe. Li Heng said to Loki, don't worry, we are very powerful. Tony nodded silently, ready for the next battle. But Loki looked at Li Heng in confusion, are you saying that I don't have much fighting power? Loki suspected that Li Heng secretly implied his fighting ability, so he questioned him directly and handed his handcuffed hands to Thor, wanting Thor to untie them for him. You still don't believe me, my brother? Thor looked at Loki and said, do you believe in yourself? He retorted, but Thor still stepped forward and opened the handcuffs for Loki. After all, having one more fighting force would be of some use later. When Thor opened the handcuffs and put them on his waist, Loki said, I don't trust myself. Then he pulled out the dagger that Thor had given him and stabbed Thor hard. Loki's movements were so fast that Thor had no time to react and was stabbed in the stomach by Loki. Oh! Thor! Jane saw Loki's action and wanted to go forward to check. Similarly, Tony was also startled by this sudden scene. But Loki kicked Thor off the mountain with his foot and chased Thor to the ground. Seeing that Thor wanted to summon Thor's hammer, Loki directly cut off Thor's right hand with a dagger, then stepped on Thor fiercely and said to Malkith in front of him, all I want is to step on you and Odin. At this time Jane caught up and ran to Thor's side to check his injuries. Li Heng and Tony also hurriedly chased after him, but they were no match for Loki at all. They were knocked out by Loki in a few moves and lay on the ground, unable to stand up. Then Loki stepped forward and pulled Jane up, and said to Malkith, Malkith, I am Loki of Jotunheim, and I have brought you a great gift. After saying that, he threw Jane in front of Malkith and made his request, my request is very simple, let me watch Asgard turn into ashes. Malkith didn't quite believe what Loki said, but the cursed warrior beside him whispered in Malkith's ear, he is the enemy of Asgard. After hearing the confirmation of the cursed warrior, Malkith believed Loki's words, then came to Thor and asked Thor to look up, look at me. As for the duo of Li Heng and Tony in the distance, they were not a threat at all in Malkith's eyes. Then Malkith raised his right hand and controlled the ether particles in Jane's body through the air, controlling Jane to slowly float in the air. He then forcibly controlled the ether particles to peel out of Jane's body, forming a ball in the air between several people. Because the ether particles were peeled out, Jane fell to the ground. At this moment, Malkith was still looking at the treasure that was lost and recovered. Li Heng suddenly appeared in front of him. At the same time, Thor's voice rang out, Loki, it's now. Li Heng appeared so quickly that Malkith had no time to react. Li Heng touched the surface of the ether particles, then turned around and took Jane on the ground away from here. Hearing Thor calling him, Loki made Thor's hand appear from the illusion. Thor picked up Thor's hammer and released lightning directly at the ether particles. Tony saw that the others had started to move, so he added a little fuel to the ether particles, and more than a dozen bombs flew towards the ether particles. Excessive energy filled the interior of the ether particles, and several people did not stop what they were doing until a huge explosion occurred. It turned out that when everyone was coming down from the mountain, Li Hung had secretly pulled Tony aside and told him about the tacit understanding between Thor and Loki, so this time it should still be their plan, and let Tony cooperate according to the situation. This led to the scene led by Loki in front of Malekith just now. The purpose is to remove the ether particles from Jane's body and destroy them when the opportunity arises. The smoke from the explosion dissipated, and several pairs of eyes stared at the center of the explosion. Malekith disappeared, only red crystal dust fragments rose from the ground, and then turned into ether particles again and drilled into Malekith's body. Li Hung said, "Oh, it seems that the second goal was not successful." After absorbing the ether particles, Malekith no longer took everyone seriously, so he turned around and was about to leave, handing Li Hung and the others over to his men. Seeing this situation, Li Hung knew that a battle was inevitable. "Okay, everyone, let's start the battle." As he spoke, he began to use magic, releasing a large-scale freezing magic, freezing all the dark elf warriors in front of him. Tony and Thor took the opportunity to step forward and take care of them one by one. Then Thor didn't want to give up, and rushed directly towards Malekith, so Malekith had to turn around and defend himself. Seeing Thor flying directly towards him, Malekith waved his hand and knocked Thor aside. Seeing this, Loki wanted to help, but was stopped by Li Hung. "Loki, don't fight them head-on. It's better to launch a sneak attack and let us attract the fire from the front. This way the battle will be more effective." Loki thought about what Li Hung said, and then remembered that what he was best at was using illusions to deceive the vision, so he agreed with Li Hung's suggestion, turned invisible, and disappeared from the field. Li Hung called Tony to join Thor's battle to relieve him of some pressure, and he also reminded Jane, just stay where you are. It's best not to move. We may not have time to see you." After seeing Jane nod, Li Hung rushed directly to Malekith and fought with him. Tony had already started bombing with bombs, and easily eliminated a large group of soldiers and faced the cursed warriors. Just when Tony was facing the cursed warrior and dared not be distracted, Loki's figure suddenly appeared from behind the cursed warrior. He wanted to attack from behind, but unfortunately he was dodged. Chapter 115. Then the cursed warrior threw a black hole bomb at Loki and Tony. Loki recognized the type of bomb at a glance. It was the black hole bomb of the Dark Elves. It would produce a small black hole, absorb everything around it, and then disappear after a while. "Run!" Loki shouted at Tony, then turned around and ran. However, the attraction of the black hole was too great, and Loki was gradually sucked into the air. Just when he was about to fall in, Tony flew over from the side and knocked Loki out directly, which just helped Loki escape from the black hole. Li Hung and Thor teamed up to fight Malekith, but unexpectedly, a cursed warrior suddenly appeared behind them. It turned out that after the cursed warrior temporarily drove away Loki and Tony, he turned around and helped Malekith. Thor and Li Hung can only deal with the cursed warriors first. Malekith took advantage of this opportunity, boarded the spaceship directly, then left after becoming invisible, leaving the cursed warriors to cover him. Thor stepped forward and fought the cursed warrior in close combat. The two men fought each other with fists. Li Hung used the power of space to enhance his own strength. Together with Thor, they knocked the cursed warrior to the ground, and then used the space gate to directly split the cursed warrior into two halves. Looking at the dead cursed warrior on the ground, Thor turned his head and gave Li Hung a thumbs up. He didn't expect Li Hung to be able to use this kind of move. "Wow, Li, this one you used looks very powerful and hard to defend against." Li Hung smiled and said, "Well, I should have used it earlier." Tony had just saved Loki once, and then the two of them worked together to face a large number of Dark Elf soldiers. Just when Tony was about to release the palm cannon again to blast the Dark Elf soldiers in front of him into pieces, an energy beam flew from the side and hit the elf soldiers, achieving the effect Tony wanted. After a moment of hesitation, Tony realized that this was not launched by him, so he looked in the direction where the energy beam came from and saw Li Hung putting down his hands. "Hey, this is my target, you stole my head." Hearing Tony's shout, Li Hung shrugged, stretched out his hand to signal Tony to act quickly, and he would no longer interfere. Seeing Li Heng's action, Tony looked back at the battlefield. Well, he guessed that it should be Li Heng who was helping. After all, Tony and Loki also saw the death of the cursed warrior just now, and knew that Li Heng had freed up his hands. Then a few people quickly cleared out the remaining soldiers on the field, found Jane who had run away, gathered together and prepared to discuss what to do next. Although the ether particles were successfully removed from Jane's body this time, they were not destroyed, allowing Malekith to take them back and leave the dark world. While several people were discussing, the environment of the dark world became more and more complex and harsh. They had no choice but to find a cave to hide first, and then continue the discussion. Arriving in the cave, Jane spoke first and expressed her opinion. Malekith will release the ether particles. He is not going to destroy the Aesir or a certain planet, but to destroy everything. Jane thought about it for a moment and continued, I just saw him in my memory. He went to Earth with the ether particles. Jane asked, why did he go to Earth? Because the celestial bodies converge. Oh my god! If only I hadn't discovered the ether particles. Jane covered her face in a state of collapse, reflecting on her mistakes. Thor quickly stepped forward to comfort her, even if that's the case, it will only delay the time for Malekith to obtain the ether particles. I found the ether in search of you, Jane said, looking up at Thor, and we are now trapped here. I don't think we are trapped here. To be precise, we are not trapped. Li Heng said at this time. Tony was puzzled. Li, you mean, you can, from such a distance? Li Heng nodded, confirming Tony's idea. Seeing Li Heng's affirmation, Tony's face suddenly broke into a smile. He didn't have to worry about being trapped. Since Li Heng could be sure, there would be no mistakes. At this time, Thor and the others looked at Li Heng and the other man, wondering what riddles they were talking about. Li Heng saw 3 pairs of confused eyes staring at him, so he explained, when I said we are not trapped, I meant that I can use my ability to take everyone away from here. Now I need you to decide whether you want to leave or not. Li, are you telling the truth? Thor confirmed with Li Heng again. Then after getting the accurate answer, he looked at Jane, and Jane said directly, then let's leave here and go back to Earth directly. Li Heng nodded, okay, let's go back to Earth then. As he spoke, he opened the portal, located the other end in London, and then led a few people through the portal to London. When walking through the portal, Loki looked at the familiar power and began to wonder why Li Heng, an Earthling, could possess such power and use it so skillfully. However, now was not a good time to ask, so Loki could only temporarily suppress his doubts. Walking out of the portal, Jane recognized it at a glance. This was the place where Thor took her to leave the Earth and go to Asgard. She found a car outside and took everyone back to her laboratory to find Daisy first. When Jane drove to her laboratory, she saw Daisy checking data inside. Jane hurriedly went up and gave Daisy a hug. After Daisy saw Jane clearly, she looked at her clothes again. Because she was running out of time, Jane was still wearing the Asgard clothes she had put on in Asgard. Daisy asked, Jane, did you go to the party? And you can't just walk away like this. And the world is going crazy. And we saw that kind of scene, all over the street. While Jane was listening to Daisy's nagging, she turned her head and saw Selvig. Hi Eric, long time no see. Selvig looked up and saw Jane standing in front of him. He quickly stood up and hugged her. Jane, that's great. After seeing what Jane was wearing, Selvig continued to ask, are you going to Asgard? Jane didn't answer him right away because she saw Selvig's bare legs. Where are your pants? At this time, the intern explained, he said that this would help him think. Okay, now I need all of your research results, including your work on gravity anomalies. Chapter 116. Selvig looked surprised when he heard Jane's request, all of them. Jane nodded affirmatively, no, all of them. After saying that, Jane turned around and prepared to get busy. At this time, Thor looked at Selvig and shouted, are you okay, Eric? Hearing someone calling his name, he turned around and saw Thor wearing a cape on the back of his armor. Hey, Thor. When Eric was about to hug him, he seemed to suddenly remember something and asked, your brother didn't come this time. Before Thor could answer him, Loki came out from behind him and stood in front of Eric, saying, I'm so sorry that I couldn't fulfill your wish. Here I come again. Loki's original intention was to play a prank, but he didn't expect that when Eric saw him, there would be a flash of disgust in his eyes, and then he slapped Loki in the face without thinking. Loki didn't expect that someone would slap him like this, so he wanted to teach Eric a lesson, but fortunately Thor stopped him and pulled him apart. Otherwise, looking at Eric's expression, the two of them would probably fight. After being pulled apart, Loki tells Thor to let him go and says, "I hate him." Soon after, Tony and Li Hung also walked into the room. When Eric saw Li Hung and the others, he quickly stepped forward, led them to their seats, and asked them to sit down and rest. Asgard. Odin learned from the information brought back by his subordinates when they returned that Thor and his men had a battle in the Dark World, but they were no longer there. Odin could only continue to wait for the results. Jane's laboratory. After Jane changed her clothes, she quickly came out to find Eric. Tony also knew some relevant knowledge, so they started discussing it. Jianxian said, Malekith will release ether particles to a certain point where the 9 kingdoms are connected to achieve his goal. Tony, yes, if you do that, the lethality will be increased exponentially. Eric looked at Tony and agreed, with each additional realm, its energy will increase exponentially. It will endanger the entire universe. Thor said, but the convergence of celestial bodies is temporary, which means that it must be in the right time and the right place to be effective. Daisy asked, so how do you know the right place? Greenwich. Li Hung gave the answer directly without waiting for them to continue asking. Then he faced several pairs of puzzled eyes. How did you know? Tony came over and asked Li Hung. Li Hung had no choice but to repeat the reasoning process to them. We can find the answer through clues left by ancient people. Thousands of years ago, celestial bodies converged, and several major countries on the earth at that time left corresponding records. As he said this, Li Hung took out the world map, and then connected several places on the map. The center of the final connection was exactly Greenwich that Li Hung mentioned. Borders between countries will almost completely disappear, and the laws of physics will almost collapse. Gravity will become unstable, space will be squeezed, and everything in reality will fall apart. Jane described what Greenwich would look like at that time, and this description sounded unacceptable. Thor raised his hand to summon his hammer and looked at Li Hung and Tony. Li Hung knew that this was another major crisis for the entire world, so he said to Tony, Hey, Tony, we need to start contacting the Illuminati people and gather together quickly to face the impending world-destroying crisis. Before Li Hung finished speaking, Tony had already instructed Jarvis to contact everyone one by one and asked them to gather at the villa. He would ask Li Hung to go back and pick them up later. The next day, Li Hung and Tony went back to make preparations, and to pick up other people to come to London, so Jane and the other 3 came to Greenwich first and installed Eric's equipment in the square in Greenwich. Li Hung and Tony returned to New York and met everyone who had gathered in the villa. Li, why are you so anxious to gather us together? What happened? Steve asked Li Hung for the details. Li Hung could only tell everyone roughly what happened while Tony was repairing his suit. Everyone was very interested in what Li Hung said about the several kingdoms and the grievances between the Dark Elves and Asgard. Until Li Hung told Malekith's plan, the leader of the Dark Elves, Malekith, has now taken back the holy relic of their clan, the ether particles, and is going to use the ether particles to destroy the entire universe and plunge the universe into darkness again, so that he can become the new master. And now the place where the celestial bodies converge is in Greenwich, so we have to go there in advance and be prepared to deal with the invasion of the Dark Elves. At this time Natasha spoke, I just sent the news back to S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. received the news and is also ready to face the battle and will make corresponding deployments. Li Hung nodded to show that he understood. At this time, Li Hung saw Tony coming out in his rested battle suit, so he asked, so is everyone ready? We are about to face the second major crisis. Everyone looked serious and nodded to show that they were ready. Then Li Hung led everyone to teleport directly to Greenwich, ready to wait for Malekith's arrival. Just as Daisy was leading the interns to install Eric's equipment in the square, waves appeared on the lake next to the square. Then, the invisible Dark Elf spaceship showed its tracks. It turned out that without anyone knowing, the Dark Elf spaceship had come to Earth and reached Greenwich. The spaceship came directly to the center of the square. When the spaceship appeared, the people around it had already fled in a hurry. When the spaceship stopped in the square, it opened and Malekith walked down with his men. At this time, Thor took Loki and flew directly to Malekith, facing him and preparing to stop him. Malekith looked at the 2 men and said, People of Asgard, there is no need for you to run so far, because death will visit you soon. As he said this, he glared at Loki. Loki laughed awkwardly, knowing that he had deceived Malekith before and he now remembered it. If he accidentally fell into his hands, the consequences could be serious. Chapter 117. Thor responded strongly, I will not die in your hands. Malekith continued, your universe should not exist at all. Your country and your family will be completely wiped out. As he spoke, Malekith became more and more angry, and then he attacked Thor directly, using the power of ether particles to knock Thor back. Loki also quickly dodged to the side. This scene happened to be seen by Li Hung and his group. Then everyone did their job and began to encircle and suppress the soldiers brought by Malekith. They also knew that Malekith would still have to be dealt with by Li Hung and Thor, so they directly targeted the soldiers. Before Malekith could see clearly, he was restrained by Li Hung and Thor, and could only watch his men fall one after another. Finally, his anger exploded, mixed with the power of ether particles, blasting Li Hung and the others away. Jane, who was standing on the roof, saw this and said to Eric, we have to speed up. We don't have much time. Eric looked at Jane's actions and asked doubtfully, will this work? My equipment is used to detect abnormalities, not to create them. Jane was busy with her work and had no time to answer Eric's questions. After adjusting the equipment in her hand, she said, hurry up, Daisy, there are only a few left for you to plug in. In the square, Thor summoned lightning and barely fought Malekith, but he couldn't last for a few times. Li Hung used magic to interfere with Malekith while they were fighting. Li Hung didn't want to show his ability to copy weapons for the time being, but he couldn't use the energy of ether particles with his bare hands in a short period of time, so he could only use magic and mental energy to fire energy cannons to interfere with Malekith's movements. Li Hung watched Thor being knocked away several times in a row and realized that this would not work, so Li Hung opened his mouth to provoke Malekith, I thought that after getting that weapon, you would be able to attack more fiercely. Li Hung said harsh words and taunted him, but the blood flowing from the corner of Thor's mouth showed that Thor was struggling to hold on. This made Malekith relax his vigilance and prepare to launch a big move. Hearing that Li Hung was still provoking Malekith, Thor looked at Li Hung in disbelief, as if to say, brother, how could you do this? I am the one being beaten, not you, so you are just provoking him violently, right? Anyway, it is not you who is being beaten. Li Hung saw that Malekith stopped his continuous attacks and started to fiddle with the ether particles. Then he took this opportunity to look at Thor and gave him a wink. The two of them exerted their strength at the same time. Thor threw Thor's hammer at the ether particles, while Li Hung fired 3 consecutive energy cannons at the ether particles. This time, Malekith was blown away directly. The impact of the backward flight was so great that he hit several cars before he came to a stop. Malekith was also injured. Li Hung and Thor planned to kill Malekith while he was sick, so they took the initiative to attack him, and the two took turns attacking. On Jane's side, after Daisy plugged in all the equipment, Jane started her operation. Controlling the equipment, all the dark elf soldiers around were teleported away. Seeing this scene, Daisy asked excitedly, wow, this is so cool. How did you do it? The interaction between the gravitational field and the weak points of aggregation between countries can produce such an effect. Then Jane continued to do this while waiting for the peak of the celestial gathering. There were still 8 minutes left. As long as she waited for 8 minutes, Jane would have a way to deal with them. Outside, Li Hung and Thor were still fighting with Malekith, while the others were dealing with the dark elf soldiers. At the same time, the British Air Force and shield fighter jets finally arrived at the battlefield. After targeting the dark elf spaceship, they opened fire, launched missiles and then watched the missiles fly towards the dark elf spaceship. But then an unusual scene was seen. When the missile approached the target, its flight trajectory changed directly and flew towards the sky over Greenwich. As the peak of the celestial convergence was getting closer, the shadows of several other major countries appeared in the sky above Greenwich, and connecting space channels were opened. Malekith broke away from the fight between Li Hung and Thor, came to the center of the square, and began to release ether particles. He was ready to achieve his goal. Through interconnected space channels, ether particles gradually connected to other worlds. Jane found Li Hung and Sol with the backpack, and Sol asked, "Does this device work?" "It's useless. We can't get close to him," Jane replied. At this time, Li Hung said, "It's okay, as long as the equipment can still be used, as for getting close to him, I have a way." Li Hung then took the device from Jane's hand and teleported it towards the center of the square. Facing the storm of ether particles, Li Hung came to Malekith. After seeing Li Hung's appearance clearly, Malekith said, "Why is he not a warrior from Asgard, but a native of Earth. Li Heng did not reply, but threw a device directly at Malekith. Malekith stretched out his right hand to catch it. Jane took the opportunity to activate the device and teleport Malekith's right arm to the Dark World, causing Malekith to lose an arm. Then he did the same thing and removed his left hand. Malekith then said, "Do you think you can stop this from happening? Ether particles cannot be destroyed." With that, Malekith reformed his two arms using only the ether particles. Li Heng watched his movements and said, "Oh, really?" Then Li Heng took out the ether particles he copied from the space, the two ether particles cancelled each other out, and then Li Heng walked step by step to Malekith. Malekith looked at the ether particle in Li Heng's hand, and was so surprised that he couldn't finish his words. "How did you get it? Don't worry about it, just worry about yourself." As he said that, Li Heng directly activated the power of space and released it towards Malekith. Malekith felt Li Heng's attack and quickly dodged, but he didn't expect that Li Heng fired another energy cannon and hit him directly in the body. Malekith was hit without being able to dodge, and Li Heng took the opportunity to use the power of space to kill Malekith on the spot. Chapter 118. With the death of Malekith, the ether particle storm it caused gradually dissipated. Seeing this, the others quickly gathered around, ready to help Li Heng fight at any time. But when the storm was completely gone, only Li Heng was left standing, and Malekith's death was revealed. Seeing Malekith dead, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Then they saw Li Heng walking out alone, and everyone gathered around him, looking at Li Heng and waiting for his confirmation. Li Heng nodded to everyone, and then said, "Malekith has been completely killed by me, everyone does not need to worry anymore." Yet, after hearing the exact news from Li Heng, everyone cheered. This time the world crisis was resolved again. "Oh, run!" At this moment, the Dark Elf spaceship lost its energy support and began to fall towards everyone. Li Heng first teleported everyone to the side. Then he used the power of space to teleport the entire spaceship directly to the Dark World. "Okay, it's okay. I got the spaceship away. This way I don't have to clean it up." At this time, Natasha informed Nick Fury through the headset that the enemies on the scene had been eliminated. Nick Fury then turned the fighter plane around and began to return. As time went by, the peak of celestial body aggregation had passed, and the space passages of several other worlds above Greenwich disappeared one after another, leaving only Greenwich full of traces of battle. After seeing that all the problems had been solved, Li Heng and his team were preparing to leave. At this time, the British Secretary of Defence came to the scene, stopped Li Heng and his team, and prepared to discuss the follow-up measures for Greenwich. At this time, Nick Fury and Coulson also arrived at the scene by plane. Seeing that Li Heng and others were stopped, Nick Fury stepped forward to negotiate with the Secretary of Defense. Coulson came to Li Heng and said, "Li, you can go now. Leave the rest of the things here to us." Li Heng looked at Coulson and said, "Don't think I don't know your purpose. You want to clean up the battlefield and bring back useful things for research." Seeing Li Heng directly reveal their purpose, Coulson was embarrassed and didn't say anything. Li Heng continued, "Tell Nick Fury not to pretend to handle things for me in front of me. He is overthinking that I will owe you a favor for S.H.I.E.L.D. The battlefield is left to you. We will deal with the enemy. This is purely a favor that Nick Fury owes me. Remember to tell him." After saying this, Li Heng took everyone back to New York. The matter was over and everyone returned to their own lives. After Thor said goodbye to Li Heng and Tony, he found Jane, explained everything to her, and then took Loki back to Asgard. Thor and Loki found Odin, and Odin said to Thor, "You once said that there would be no wiser monarch than me. You were wrong. The 9 kingdoms have gathered together, and they have all seen with their own eyes that you saved their lives. How will Asgard repay its new king?" Thor said, "My life. Father, I cannot be king, but I will use my whole life to protect the 9 kingdoms. But I cannot sit on the throne." Thor looked at Loki beside him and said, "Although Loki has some faults, he understands some truths that I will never learn. The cruelty and sacrifice brought by the throne will change a person. So I would rather be a good person than a wise leader." Thor walked to Loki's side and patted him on the shoulder. "Now, I think Loki is more suitable than me to be the next king of Asgard." When Loki heard this, he looked at Thor with disbelief. He could not believe that Thor refused the throne and recommended him to Odin. Odin looked at Thor and asked, "Is this my son's wish, or the wish of the woman he loves?" Odin still didn't believe it. In such a short period of time, Thor changed his ambition since childhood. I never felt that your mother was influencing your decision. Thor answered Odin's doubts directly. I'm not doing this for Jane, and she doesn't know what I'm going to say. At this time, Odin finally heard Thor's determination in his words, and then sighed, one son is too eager for the throne, and the other abandons it. Is this what I leave for future generations? At this time, Loki finally couldn't help it. Now was a good opportunity. If he didn't try harder, Thor might change his mind again. Father, I can learn from you how to govern the kingdom. Since my brother doesn't want to inherit the throne, then we can work together better to protect the kingdom. Yes, Father, I believe Loki has changed. Why don't we let him have a try? We have to trust him once. Thor also tried to persuade. Having said that, Thor looked at the Thor's hammer in his hand and prepared to hand it to Odin. Odin looked at Thor, then at the hammer, and said, if you are worthy of it, it is yours. I'll do the best I can, Thor said. I can neither bless you nor wish you good luck, said Odin. Thor nodded after hearing what Odin said. Then Odin looked at Loki and said, as for you, you will follow me and start learning more things. Hearing Odin's disguised confirmation, Loki and Thor both showed happy smiles on their faces. Thor was about to meet Frigga and say hello. Just as he was about to leave, Odin's voice came, even though I am proud of my son's current behavior, I cannot say it out loud, but I will praise you in my heart. Go, my son. Thank you, father. Thor left the hall, leaving only Loki and Odin. Odin looked at Loki and said, you assisted in the battle against Malekith this time, and fully demonstrated your intelligence. Loki, my son, I am also proud of you. Thank you, father. Loki bowed excitedly when he heard Odin's praise. Afterwards, Odin asked Sif to bring people to the collector and hand over the ether particles to the collector for safekeeping. Earth. 2 days have passed since Thor said goodbye. Jane has become listless and has no energy to do anything these days. Daisy finally couldn't stand it anymore and persuaded her during dinner, he will come back. It's just that, he was gone for 2 years last time. But this time we were only gone 2 days. Jane replied. Eric asked, did he say anything before he left? Yes. He said he wanted to explain to his father that he committed treason when he came out of Asgard. After that, Jane scooped another large spoonful of oats and ate it. Chapter 119. As he was speaking, a colorful beam of light descended from the sky outside and landed on the open space next to the laboratory. The few people who heard the sound looked outside and realized that someone was coming from Asgard. Jane quickly ran outside and waited beside the Rainbow Bridge. She was sure that it was Thor who came this time. When the Rainbow Bridge disappeared, Thor appeared in front of her. Jane excitedly went forward and kissed Thor. Then Thor settled down on Earth and lived with Jane. After returning home, Li Hung first reported his safety to the old man, then went back to his own room and checked the ether particles he had copied. While playing with the ether particles, Li Hung calculated in his mind, there are a total of 6 Infinity Stone weapons. I have copied 3 of them, namely the Cosmic Cube, the ether particles, and the Mind Scepter. There are 3 left. I have to wait a little longer before I have a chance. Now the Cosmic Cube is in Asgard, the ether has been given to the collector, and the Mind Scepter is in Shield. Li Hung suddenly sat up straight, because he remembered that the Mind Scepter seemed to have been secretly replaced by Hydra's people when it was handed over at the end of Avengers 1, and now it fell into the hands of Hydra. Li Hung touched his chin and thought for a while. What was Hydra doing with the scepter? Oh, it seems that Baron Citricle conducted experiments with the scepter, and the subjects were Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, that is, Wanda Maximoff and Pietro Maximoff. Thinking of this, Li Hung suddenly had an idea. It was estimated that the experiment had just started not long ago, and he didn't know whether their abilities had been activated. Li Hung wanted to take a step ahead and solve the 2 of them. After all, their abilities are both very powerful, one is chaos magic, and the other is the power of extreme speed. In his previous life, Li Hung had seen the scene where Wanda activated her abilities, which was close to the power of making things happen with her words. Of course, her fundamental ability was to modify reality. As for Pietro, although his performance in the movie was rather lame, Li Hung suspected that the reason for this was that he was killed due to insufficient film funding. After all, that was top speed, and everything would slow down at top speed, so how could he be killed by a bullet? It doesn't make sense no matter how you think about it. Thinking of sufficient reasons, Li Heng prepared to let Xiao Zhuzh start collecting information. Xiao Zhuzh, collect the latest news about Wanda and Pietro through the information on the internet, and then report to me. Okay, master. After handing the matter over to Xiao Zhuzh, Li Heng continued to study ether particles. Unconsciously, Li Heng was obsessed with controlling the ether particles. It was not until Xiao Zhuzh spoke that Li Heng came back to his senses. Hey, it seems I have been addicted to it without realizing it. I have to be more careful next time. What's wrong, little Zhuzh? What did you find? Master, I found some information through the information on the internet, and after tracking it, I learned that Wanda and Pietro were taken to a secret base in Sokovia in Eastern Europe. After hearing Xiao Zhuzh's report, Li Heng confirmed his memory. In other words, they are in that castle now. That's right, but how do you know it's a castle, master? Li Heng smiled and said nothing, but he began to plan the rescue of Wanda and Pietro in his heart. I hope that they have not been brought to the research base for a long time, and they should not have been fully brainwashed by Baron Citric. Li Heng was guessing in his mind, but no matter what, since he remembered the two of them, Li Heng had to go and rescue them. The manor was very big, so it wouldn't feel crowded even with 2 more people. Li Heng silently went over the plan in his mind, find the location of the castle, go in, rescue Wanda and Pietro who were imprisoned, and then take them back to the manor in New York. Well, it's very simple. Thinking of this, Li Heng prepared to set off. Sokovia, Hydra's secret research base. Wanda and Pietro were imprisoned by Baron Citric in 2 adjacent rooms respectively. The rooms were surrounded by walls on 3 sides, and only the side facing outwards was replaced with transparent glass by Baron Citric. The purpose was just to have a sufficient field of view to see the changes in the 2 people clearly during the experiment. Because they were brought here not long ago, Wanda and Pietro have not been tortured by the experiment. But after the first 2 experiments, Pietro can no longer hold on. Now he tells Wanda his thoughts. Wanda, I can no longer endure the torture of that man's experiment. Let's find a way to escape from here. Wanda first asked Pietro to keep his voice down, then observed that Baron Citric was not here, and then said, Pietro, keep your voice down and don't say such things anymore. We have no chance of escaping at the moment, so we can only continue to wait for the opportunity. Ah? What should I do then? Pietro heard what Wanda said, and thought about how he would have to continue living like this, and immediately asked in a tearful voice, how long do we have to wait? Wait until he finishes his experiments on us and we really have enough abilities. Only then can we consider escaping. Wanda told Pietro the plan and asked him to be patient. While the 2 of them were whispering, Li Heng, under the guidance of Xiao Zhuzh, had already arrived in front of the castle of Sokovia. Looking at the castle not far away, Li Heng asked Xiao Zhuzh, can you determine where the 2 of them are imprisoned? Little Zhuzh used the power of the internet to quietly hack into the computer at the base, and then found the location where the siblings were imprisoned, and pointed it out to Li Heng. Once you see the exact location, the rest becomes much easier. After several brushes with patrolling soldiers, Li Heng finally arrived at the room where Wanda and Pietro were locked up. However, Li Heng did not show up directly. Instead, he put on an invisibility cloak and hid his entire body to avoid being discovered by the people in the base. It was this opportunity that allowed Li Heng to overhear the conversation between Pietro and Wanda. Li Heng couldn't help but sigh. After going through so many things, Wanda has become calmer, and can start making an escape plan. In comparison, Pietro, who only knows how to run away, is still like a child who has not grown up. But after looking at the 2 of them carefully, Li Heng found that they looked to be in their teens and were not very old. Thinking of this, and not noticing any patrol officers coming here, Li Heng took off his invisibility cloak and revealed his figure. Chapter 120. Wanda was thinking about her escape plan when she suddenly heard Pietro shouting, You, who are you? Why did you suddenly appear here? Wanda looked up and saw a young man with black hair and black eyes standing quietly on the other side of the glass, looking at her with a smile. This instantly alerted Wanda, and she quickly stopped Pietro from yelling. Then wait quietly for that person to speak. When Li Heng saw Wanda's reaction, he felt more and more that this trip was worth it. After everyone quieted down, Li Heng spoke, Wanda, Pietro, do you want to escape from here? Hearing Li Heng's question, Wanda became more alert and felt more and more that Li Heng was sent by Baron Citric to test her, so she shook her head silently. Li Heng saw Wanda shaking her head. This was different from what he had just heard. Then he thought, maybe she still didn't believe him. So Li Heng said, "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Li Heng, and I came here to save you too. I know you don't believe me yet, but it doesn't matter, just watch what I do." After saying that, Li Heng didn't wait for Wanda's reaction. He just waved his hand and opened a portal in Wanda's room. The other end was next to Li Heng. Li Heng turned around and said to Wanda through the portal, "Look, I really am here to save you, isn't that right? Just come out directly." After saying this, Li Heng was afraid that she still didn't believe it, so he walked directly into Wanda's room through the portal and demonstrated it to her. Only then did Wanda relax her vigilance a little. Carefully and tentatively, he walked out of the portal, and then found that she really came out, so he looked at Li Heng and spoke for the first time, "Are you really here to save us?" Li Heng came out and was about to open a door for Pietro. When he heard Wanda's question, he turned around and answered her, "Yes, you are already out." "Whoa, Wanda, I'm out too." As he spoke, Pietro also ran out of the space gate, and then ran to Wanda's side and cheered. Li Heng wanted to continue talking, but suddenly he heard voices approaching from outside the room. Pietro also heard it, so he quickly shut up and looked at Wanda, not knowing what to do. Wanda looked at Li Heng. Since Li Heng said he wanted to rescue them, there should be a way. Sure enough, she saw the smile on Li Heng's face, and he said, "Okay, now someone is here, let's get out of here first and then talk about other things slowly." Then Li Heng opened another portal next to him and was the first to walk in. Wanda looked at the unknown place on the other side of the door, hesitating whether to follow it, or Pietro approached and said, "Hurry up, from the sound of it, Baron Citric will be in soon." Then he pulled Wanda into the portal. The next moment, the door of the room was pushed open, and the portal disappeared at the same time, and Baron Citric walked in. He looked at the two rooms as usual, ready to check on Wanda and Pietro, but this time was different from usual. He only saw empty rooms, the glass was intact, but the people were nowhere to be seen. Baron Citric quickly called the security personnel, "Search, everyone, put down your work and search for me. They must still be in the castle. Find them out. I want to ask them how they escaped." At Baron Citric's command, the entire castle suddenly became lively, and everyone began to search as ordered. But after searching the entire castle and not finding Wanda and Pietro, Baron Citric had to accept the fact that the two had secretly escaped. Here, Li Heng took the lead and walked through the portal, then stood on the other side and waited quietly. After a while, Pietro came out holding Wanda. As soon as they came over, Wanda began to observe. They appeared in a manor and were now standing on the lawn in front of the manor. Li Heng saw Wanda observing the environment, and then said, "Okay, we have arrived and are far away from Sokovia. You can rest assured." Wanda asked, "So where is it now?" "Oh, now we are in my manor in the suburbs of New York." Li Heng answered her, then turned and walked towards the living room on the first floor. "Why don't we sit down and continue chatting while having a drink?" Li Heng extended his hand and invited them both into the living room. Wanda and Pietro tentatively followed Li Heng into the living room and sat down. Li Heng first made a few cups of coffee, then brought them over and motioned for Wanda and Pietro to have a taste. After sitting down, Li Heng took a sip first, and then Wanda drank it with confidence. At this time, Wanda had actually begun to slowly believe what Li Heng said. Because Li Heng did lead them to escape, and they only walked through a door to reach New York. In addition, Li Heng leisurely made 3 cups of coffee before sitting down to taste them slowly. This series of actions demonstrate Li Heng's calmness and composure. At this time, Li Heng said, "Okay, I know you won't believe what I say, so let me give you 2 mobile phones, and you can search the internet to see if I am lying to you. Speaking of which, I seem to be quite famous on the internet." Li Heng touched his chin, thinking of his fame on the internet and that title, hoping not to scare them both. As he spoke, Li took out 2 mobile phones and handed them to Wanda and Pietro, asking them to search themselves while Li Heng continued to drink his coffee. After Wanda took the phone, she searched on the internet and found a lot of information about Li Heng. Pietro also came over to Wanda and looked at the results of Wanda's search together. After they both read all the news, they finally believed what Li Heng said before. Through the news reports, they roughly understood what kind of person Li Heng was, who was drinking coffee in front of them, daydreaming, and whose attention was not on them at all. Li Heng saw Wanda put down her phone, and then asked, "How is it, do you understand everything? You should believe me now, right? Do you still think that those news are fake made by me?" Wanda and Pietro both shook their heads. Then Li Heng said, "Well, that's fine. Now that we have some trust, I can tell you what happens next." Chapter 121. When Wanda heard Li Heng say that he had something else to tell her, she quickly sat up straight and waited for Li Heng to speak. After seeing Wanda's actions, Li Heng said, "Okay, Wanda, you can relax a little. This is no longer Sokovya's research base. I won't ask anything of you, and I won't conduct experiments on you anymore." "Really?" Pietro's surprised voice rang out. This was the promise he heard from Li Heng's mouth, so he quickly responded, wanting Li Heng to confirm it immediately. "So, Pietro is not always as heartless as a child." Li Heng glanced at Pietro and knew what he was thinking. However, Li Heng was also happy to let them feel at ease now. Li Heng had never thought of doing anything to them, so Li Heng said solemnly, "Okay, then I will confirm that I will not conduct experiments on you against your will." Then Li Heng looked at the two people and said, "Now? Can we continue talking about things?" Wanda nodded sheepishly. Li Heng said, "What are your plans now? People are already in New York, and even if you want to return to Sokovia, it will be very dangerous because they will definitely start looking around the castle." When Pietro heard Li Heng mention them, he obviously didn't want to return to Sokovia, but he had no decision-making power here, so he could only look at Wanda helplessly. Li Heng saw Wanda's embarrassment and said, "Stay in New York. My place is big enough for you to live in. If you have other ideas and want to leave, you can always tell me." Li Heng leaned back on the couch and offered them a choice. After hearing what Li Heng said, Wanda thought about it for a long time, and finally made up her mind after seeing the look in Pietro's eyes, "Then we will stay and live here first. But I will trouble you." Yet, Pietro was very happy to hear Wanda's words. It meant that they had someone to rely on for the time being and no longer needed to wander or seek help from others. After hearing what Wanda said, Li Heng secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although Li Heng acted indifferent just now, he actually hoped that Wanda and Pietro would stay, otherwise why would Li Heng rescue them in advance? It is precisely because they are so pitiful to be used as experimental subjects at such a young age, and the two of them also possess remarkable abilities, that this is Li Heng's real purpose. In addition, Li Heng also said, "If you are worried, you can do something within your ability, such as doing housework, etc." Li Heng's words made Wanda's eyes light up. She was feeling embarrassed for accepting Li Heng's kindness for no reason without giving anything in return. At this time, Li Heng gave her something to do. "Thank you, we will definitely do the housework well, thank you very much." Wanda was very grateful to Li Heng for what he had done. While they were talking, it was time for dinner. Li Heng saw Wanda was about to go to the kitchen to cook for herself, so he quickly stopped her and said, "Wanda, you don't have to cook here. Every day when it's time to eat, someone will deliver the food. It's all reserved in advance. You just wait until the time comes and eat it directly." As Li Heng was speaking, Banner and Samuel came up from the underground laboratory, took out the prepared meals and started eating. Banner first saw the two children next to Li Heng, so he asked, "Li, where are these two children from?" Before Li Heng spoke, Wanda spoke first, "Hello, my name is Wanda, and this is my brother Pietro. We were both locked up as experimental subjects. Thanks to Mr. Li for rescuing us and taking us in. Please take care of us in the future." Wanda pulled Pietro up and greeted Banner and Samuel one by one. "Oh, you were rescued by Li Heng." Samuel looked at Li Heng, "Why are there still people using children for experiments?" Li Heng nodded, "That's right, so after I got the news, I went straight to rescue them, and they will live together in the manor from now on." Banner said, "Hello, Wanda and Pietro, welcome to the manor. My name is Banner, and he is Samuel. We usually stay in the basement. If you have anything, you can go there to find us." Banner was worried that if he told the two children that they were also doing experiments, it would scare them, so he didn't explain it too clearly. Li Heng also understood what Banner meant, but he could only wait for time to slowly change their impressions. Then, Li Heng thought of Wanda and Pietro. It seemed that they were homeless because of the missiles of the Stark group. Thinking of this, Li Heng had a headache again, because he would definitely have to interact with Tony in the future, so how could he make Wanda and Pietro accept Tony? Li Heng slowly fell into deep thought. Wanda was eating and saw Li Heng sitting on the sofa, lost in thought. So she didn't say much and just ate silently. After Li Heng came back to his senses, Wanda asked, "Mr. Li, what are you thinking about?" Li Heng came back to his senses and heard Wanda's reserved address. He smiled and said, "Okay, there is no big age difference between us, so just call me Li." Li Heng thought for a moment, then said to Wanda, "Wanda, do you know Tony Stark?" When Wanda heard Li Heng mention Stark, there was obvious anger in her eyes. Then she looked at Li Heng without saying anything, wanting to hear why Li Heng mentioned Stark. Looking at Wanda's eyes, Li Heng knew that she still resented Stark's missiles, so Li Heng said, "I know you resent Stark because his missiles caused your displacement." Hearing this, Wanda's eyes narrowed a little. Li Heng continued, "What if I tell you that Tony is only researching those weapons, and there are other people who actually make and sell them, but they are all kept secret from Tony? Will you still continue to resent Tony?" Li Heng directly told Wanda everything about Tony's experience and what Obadiah did, hoping that after listening to it, she would slowly change her opinion of Tony. After hearing the whole story of Li Hengjian, Wanda finally understood why Li Heng mentioned Stark. However, even after listening to what Li Heng said, it is still difficult to get Wanda to change her attitude towards Tony immediately. Chapter 122. After all, the Stark missile that landed at her house left such a deep impression on Wanda that there was no way to change it in a short period of time, although Wanda also knew that it was not Tony who did it. Li Heng saw the embarrassment on Wanda's face, so he quickly said, "Oh, Wanda, I don't mean for you to change your mind about Tony immediately, but for you to change your mind slowly over time after learning the truth. Don't rush." After hearing what Li Heng said, Wanda showed a relaxed expression. Then Li Heng continued, "There's no rush for these. Take your time. Next, let me tell you about another important matter." Hearing Li Heng say that it was an important matter, Wanda and Pietro both looked at Li Heng, waiting for him to speak. "The important thing is that you are not too old now, so I think you should not stay in the manor for a long time. Otherwise, you will gradually become out of touch with your peers and society." After hearing what Li Heng said, Banner began to think about it. He felt that what Li Heng said was right and nodded in agreement. Wanda looked at Li Heng, not knowing what Li Heng wanted to do. Li Heng said, "So I think that finding a school for you so that you can return to campus, study and make friends is beneficial to your physical and mental health." Well, this should be the Chinese psychology of Li Heng in his previous life. He always thinks that children should go to school and interact with their peers. It would be better this way. Wanda and Pietro were stunned when they heard Li Heng say this. They didn't expect that the important thing Li Heng said was to let them go to school. This. Wanda hesitated for a long time, not knowing how to answer. It was Banner who spoke up at this time. "Li, I agree that they should go to school. I can also provide you with an invitation letter from a school. But what's wrong? Any other questions?" Li Heng asked. "Just do the two of them have identification cards from the United States now?" Li Heng was suddenly stumped by a question from Banner. Indeed, his ideas were all good, but the problem now was that Wanda and Pietro had no identification. Li Heng scratched his head. Then he stood up and said to the twins, "You guys eat first, I'll find a solution for you." Then Li Heng left the manor directly. Banner saw Wanda and Pietro looking at Li Heng's seat, so he continued to invite Wanda and Pietro to eat. "Okay, let's eat. Don't worry about him. I believe he will be back soon." Banner had already guessed who Li Heng had gone to find to solve the problem, and he also believed that this problem was not a problem at all for that person. However, after hearing the conversation between Li Heng and Wanda just now, Banner was not in a position to tell Wanda directly. Sure enough, just as Banner thought, after Li Heng disappeared, he came to Tony's villa and happened to meet Tony and Pepper eating a huge pizza together. "Oh, did I come at the wrong time and ruin your sweet time?" Li Heng saw Pepper snuggling in Tony's arms, and Tony was still telling Pepper about his recent trip to Asgard. Hearing the teasing voice, Tony and Pepper looked in the direction of Li Heng at the same time. Pepper stood up quickly. "Li, welcome, I didn't disturb us. Have you eaten? Let's eat something together." Li Heng didn't bother to be polite with them. He walked up and sat on the sofa, then took out a piece of pizza and started eating. He had been so busy thinking about things in the manner that he didn't even eat a few bites of the food. After finishing a piece of pizza and taking a sip of the fat otaku happy water, Li Heng told him the purpose of his visit. Tony, I got the news before that there is a test base that uses underage children for experiments. Oh my god. Before Li Heng finished speaking, Pepper sighed, did you rescue them? Of course, I have rescued them, and now they live in the manor. My idea is to let them go to school. Regardless of how they study, at least they can be with their peers, which is good for their growth. After hearing what Li Heng said, Tony and Pepper both nodded in affirmation. But I encountered a problem. Although they have come to New York, they have no ID, which means they can't go to school normally. So I came to you and wanted to ask if you have any solution. Then Li Heng continued, in fact, I can also make one for them through the internet. However, the one I make can only be said to be fake. Once it is discovered, it will be useless. So I want you to help me make the most authentic proof directly, which cannot be found no matter how hard you try. Li looked at Tony. Just as Tony was about to speak, Pepper spoke first, oh, don't worry about this matter, Li. Leave it to me. I'll take care of it. Also, do you want me to find a school for you as well? Banner is helping with school matters, and he's already got his intentions. Also, I want to tell you about what happened to these two. Then, Li Heng took Wanda and Pietro from the beginning, whose homes were destroyed by Stark missiles, and who were wandering around, and then were captured and used as experimental subjects. He told all these experiences to Tony and Pepper. When Pepper heard that the two of them were homeless because of Stark's missiles, she covered her mouth and her eyes were covered with mist. After hearing what happened to the two of them, she became even more angry. That's why I didn't bring them here directly. I wanted them to slowly and over a long period of time change their minds and accept you. It's okay, we understand. Pepper said quickly. Tony had been silent since Li Heng started telling their life story. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit dull, Li Heng took the initiative to say, by the way, Tony, I just heard you telling Pepper about the scenery of Asgard. Tony replied, yes, Pepper wants to hear what the scenery of Asgard is different about. Then next time we go to Asgard, we can take Pepper with us and treat it as a trip. Really? Li. Pepper couldn't believe her ears. Then she began to imagine her and Tony touring the beautiful scenery in other countries in the universe together, and her heart was excited. Li, we agreed, you can't forget it. I will definitely not forget it. Li Heng patted his chest to show that he remembered it. Then Pepper got up and went to find someone to get identification for Wanda and Pietro. Chapter 123. After a while, Pepper came back and said to Li Heng, Li, do you have their photos? I need photos of both of them. No. Li Heng shook his head, but I can ask Xiao Zuch to take 2 photos of them and send them over. Pepper nodded and told Li Heng to hurry up. Li Heng took out his cell phone and sent a message to Xiao Zuch. Manner. After finishing their meal, Banner and Samuel prepared to continue their experiments in the laboratory. Before leaving, Banner said to Wanda and the others, after you finish your meal, you can get familiar with the environment of the manor first. At this time, Xiao Zuch ran up from the basement and came directly in front of Wanda and Pietro. When they saw little Zuch, they were both shocked. It was only after Banner quickly explained that their worries were dispelled. Don't worry, he is Li Heng's artificial intelligence life. He must have something to ask you now. Let's hear what he says. Little Zuch said, the master said that he wants to take a picture of you to make an ID for you. After hearing what Xiao Zuch said, the two of them stood still obediently. Let Xiao Zuch take a photo, and then send it to Li Heng. After receiving the photo, Li Heng forwarded it directly to Pepper and asked her to make a certificate. After waiting for a while, the ID was delivered to the villa. Pepper handed it to Li Heng, it's ready, take a look. Li Heng took it and looked at the certificate over and over again. Seeing Li Heng's expression, Pepper laughed and said, don't worry, this proves it is true. No matter how we check, there will be no surprises. Hearing what Pepper said, Li Heng smiled, said hello to them, and returned to the manor. Okay, then I won't bother you two anymore. I'll go back first. When Li Heng returned to the living room of the manor, he didn't see anyone. Just as he was about to go to the basement to find Banner to ask, Li Heng saw Wanda and Pietro walking around the manor outside through the window. Wanda! Pietro! Li Heng shouted. Hearing Li Heng's voice, the two men quickly ran back from outside, came to Li Heng's side, and looked at Li Heng with longing. They also knew that Li Heng had gone to find someone for help in order to solve their identity problems. Now that Li Heng was back, they didn't know whether he had succeeded. After staring at Li Heng for a few seconds and not seeing that Li Heng had anything in his hand, the expressions of the two people gradually changed. At this time, Li Heng took out the proof from the system space and placed it in front of them. "Look, your proof is ready." "Wow." Pietro took the certificate first and looked at it carefully. Wanda also reached out to take it. The two looked at it for a long time, and then said to Li Heng, "Thank you very much, Li." Li Heng waved his hand. "Okay, didn't I tell you not to be so polite? Next, I will go out and buy you some daily necessities and take care of your school affairs. Soon, you will be able to go to school." Then Li Heng took the two of them out, bought them daily necessities and some clothes, and returned to the manor carrying large and small bags. "Okay, these 2 rooms are yours, you can choose one for yourselves." Li Heng took them to an empty room on the 2nd floor, let them choose one for themselves, and confirmed that they would keep the room. At night, Li Heng asked Banner to look after the 2 of them, and took them to school 2 days ago to familiarize themselves with the route, and then he could let them go to school by themselves. After settling Wanda and Pietro down, Li Heng finally had some free time and could spend a few days leisurely. Not long after, Li Heng received a call from Tony. "Hey, Li, I have new research results. Do you want to come and see my new battlesuit?" Li Heng received a call from Tony and heard Tony talking about his new battlesuit. So Li Heng calculated the time and found that it was almost the end of the year. He thought that Tony's Mark 42 must have been finalized. "Okay, wait a minute, I'll be right there." As he spoke, Li Heng went straight to the villa through the portal and saw Tony sitting in the underground laboratory injecting something into his arm. "What are you doing?" Li Heng asked. Seeing Tony injecting something directly into his body was something Li Heng could not accept. "Oh, this is my latest research success, you will be able to see it soon." Tony injected the last micro-sensing device into his arm, then stood up and looked at Benben next to him. "Hey, Benben, what are you doing here? Clean up the bloodstains on the carpet." Tony came to the center of the laboratory and said while facing the video, "Good evening, welcome to the production base. I am honored to announce that you have a new lively and lovely brother." These words were said to the previous generations of battlesuits in the window. Then Tony looked at the camera again and directed, "Close up first, then panoramic, and put the time and date on it." Finally, everything that needed to be explained was said. "Mark 42 suit test begins now." Hearing Tony's words, Li Heng thought to himself, as expected, the Mark 42 suit has really been made, and now all that's left is testing. "Start the program." Tony gave the command, and then placed the large number of parts on the table not far away, and they began to start up one after another. Even so, Tony still felt unsatisfied, so he asked Jarvis to play a piece of music. So Jarvis started the record player next to him and played a song, and Tony moved to the music. And he said to Li Heng, "Li, just watch carefully from now on. I will show you the most advanced battlesuit I can make now." Li Heng smiled and nodded, "Okay, I'm looking forward to it." Next, Tony stretched out his left hand straight forward, clenched his right fist and placed it next to his ear, looking at the pile of parts on the table with anticipation. Unfortunately, after making the gesture, the parts didn't respond at all. Tony had no choice but to make the same action twice again, but the parts still didn't move at all. "Ha, that's bad." Tony sighed, and patted the micro-sensing device on his arm and tried again. Fortunately, this time the parts responded. One of the arm parts suddenly started up, and using its own thrusters, it flew directly towards Tony's left hand, and was accurately put on Tony's left hand, and then began to transform into a battlesuit covering the palm and the entire forearm. Chapter 124. Seeing that it worked, Tony raised his head towards Li Heng and proudly showed off his results. Then Tony said, "Okay, that's it, come on everybody." With the activation of the first component and Tony's words, the other parts also began to activate, and according to the micro-sensing device, one by one they flew to the position where they should appear, and connected on Tony's body, finally forming a complete battlesuit. Li Heng watched the whole process from the side. Although several parts flew too fast and almost hit Tony, Tony asked them to slow down. It was not until someone knocked Tony forward from behind that Li Heng started to laugh. However, as Tony was still there, Li Heng did not dare to laugh too loudly. At this time, Tony didn't care about Li Heng's reaction. He quickly said to Jarvis, "Jarvis, be gentle, okay?" Then the remaining parts slowed down a bit, allowing Tony to catch all of them steadily with his body, until only the mask was left. Looking at it, Tony threatened, "Come on, I'm not afraid of you," and changed his posture, ready to receive the last piece. With a handsome one-knee landing, all the parts finally flew onto Tony's body. Tony then looked up at Li Hyung, "I'm the best." Just as he finished speaking, another piece of debris suddenly flew out from behind and hit Tony's back at the highest speed, knocking him out directly, and all parts of his body were broken into pieces. Tony was also hit so hard that his body was in pain and he lay on the ground for a long time to recover. Jarvis said, "Sir, it's really a pleasure to watch you work as always." Ha ha ha. Seeing this, Li Hung finally couldn't help but burst into laughter. Tony's appearance combined with Jarvis's finishing blow really made Li Hung couldn't help laughing. He walked forward and helped Tony up from the ground, all the while continuing to laugh at Tony. "Okay, I'm still in front of you, and you're laughing at me like this." Tony, who was helped up, was full of depression. He originally wanted to ask Li Hung to come over to see the latest results, but he didn't expect that this time he would make a big mess. After being helped up, Tony sat on a chair, holding the ice pack that Li Hung had just prepared for him, and applied it to the wound on his head, but he was still very depressed. Then he turned on the TV, ready to distract Li Hung. Sure enough, after turning on the TV, both of them were attracted by the news. While watching the news, suddenly, the signal was hijacked, and then a video began to play. The video was produced by the current Ten Commandments gang, and the person speaking in the video was the leader of the Ten Commandments gang, Mandarin. "Some people say I'm a terrorist, I think I'm a teacher." Then the Mandarin looked at the camera and said, "You guys, are you ready for another lesson?" Then he gave an example, saying that in the past, the US Army attacked and killed other members of the Cheyenne tribe while they were out hunting, and also took away their land. So, just 39 hours ago, the Ali Alham Air Base in Kuwait was also raided, and I did it. It was an Air Force military church filled with women and children, and the soldiers were out on exercises, and the warriors were not there. Then the Mandarin said, "So, Mr. President, you still reject my teachings and ignore me once again." Then a video of terrorists breaking into an Air Force base was played. "You know who I am, but you don't know where I am, and you can never predict where I'm coming from." At this point, the video playback is complete and the TV signal returns to its original state. If it weren't for the major news now interrupting the emergency news that just happened, it would be as if nothing had happened. Until the cabinet held a press conference, the cabinet's response to this terrorist is to send Colonel James Rhodes, the Iron Patriot. Li Hung and Tony watched the cabinet news together and saw many people making fun of Rhodes and Iron Patriot. Li Hung couldn't help laughing again. "Haha, this name, Tony, I bet, you definitely didn't agree with it, haha." Tony's face changed, and he took out his phone and called Rhodes. "Rhodes, why did they send you out? What's wrong, Tony? At least the public opinion feedback is very good, right?" Rhodes asked. "I just think the name Iron Patriot is just terrible." "Okay. But the name Mech Warrior is a bit too much, right? So in comparison, this one sounds pretty good." Tony was finally choked by Rod and couldn't speak, so he could only change the subject. "So, what happened? Who is that Mandarin? Forward. Seriously, can you tell me about him?" Sensing Rhodes' hesitation, Tony quickly asked Rhodes to talk about the Mandarin. So Rhodes lowered his voice and said, "Tony, you know, this is confidential information." "Well, there were actually 9 explosions in total." 9. Tony repeated and then looked at Li Hung next to him, and turned on the speaker of his phone so that Li Hung could also hear what Rhodes said. "Yes, but the public only knows about 3. The key problem now is that no one can find the equipment they used. There are no bomb casings." At this time Tony said, "Rod, you know I can help, as long as you come to me." Rhodes said, "Tony, I know you mean well, but they don't want to ask you for help right now. After several alien incidents, they have been frightened. The primary goal this time is to stop the Mandarin's actions." Then Rhodes hesitated for a moment and continued, "And they think this time it's not an alien invasion, but just a struggle between countries on Earth, so they don't want you to get involved for the time being. Do you understand what I mean?" After hearing Rhodes' explanation, Tony glanced at Li Hung and replied, should I say I understand. Now, after Li Hung boosted Tony's confidence many times, he did not suffer from severe anxiety at this time like in the movie, so Tony's expression was still very relaxed. He talked to Rod and hung up the phone. Then he and Li Hung prepared to wait and see what those people would do and how they would deal with the Mandarin. Li Hung didn't say much, but he knew that Tony would get involved later. Chapter 125. Stark Corporation. Pepper, who is now the actual controller of the company, is discussing the company's human resources with Happy, the director of the company's security department. But Pepper slowly had to tell Happy a fact. Happy, you know that since you took up your post, this position is very suitable for you. Thank you, said Happy. Don't thank me, but employee complaints have tripled across the company. Happy once again solemnly said to Pepper, thank you. Pepper wanted to continue talking, but Happy's thank you made her at a loss for words, so she said, that's not a compliment. No, that's a compliment. Happy shook his head, disagreeing with what Pepper meant. It's obvious that someone is hiding something. Just as Pepper was about to continue speaking, a voice came from the side, excuse me. Pepper and Happy looked over at the same time, and the secretary said, Miss Pepper, the person you had an appointment with at 4 o'clock has arrived. Okay, thanks. Then Pepper looked at Happy, Happy, let's talk about this later. I have something tricky to deal with now. What's the matter? As the head of the security department, Happy heard Pepper's words and quickly asked her what happened. Oh, it's just that I used to work with him and he kept trying to ask me out, which was a bit awkward and I didn't want that. With that, Happy opened the door for Pepper and walked into the reception room, where he saw Killian standing there. Pepper. Killian laughed. Pepper, on the other hand, was full of disbelief and asked tentatively, Killian. Then I got a positive answer, you look good. Oh my god. Pepper was a little surprised when she saw Killian in a suit, very decent. What are you busy with recently? Killian said nonchalantly, nothing much, just spent a few years at the physio. At this time, Happy noticed something was wrong, so he was about to ask Killian, but Pepper directly asked him to leave the office. Happy, it's okay, we are old friends. After hearing this, Happy went out. Then Pepper invited Killian to sit down and talk. Killian then explained, after years of sidestepping the president's ban, my think tank has finally come up with something small about unethical biotechnology research. Killian took out a device and placed it on the table, then said, we all call it extremis virus. And he placed something under his ear, close to his brain. After finishing what he was doing, Killian said, please let me turn off the light for a moment. Then he turned off the light and said, next, please look at the human brain. As he spoke, he threw the 3 beads in his hand onto the table, and then the 3 beads began to project images, which were extremely clear in the dark office. Pepper looked at the thing projected in the air, and it looked very similar to a real brain in action. Killian sighed on the side, this is a real brain. Oh, it's incredible. Thanks, that's my brain, Killian explained. What? Pepper was stunned when she heard Killian's words, unable to believe it. This is the inside of my brain, this is a live broadcast. Killian pointed to something under his ear and then wanted to demonstrate it to Pepper. Come on, stand up there. Killian pulled Pepper to stand on the table and asked Pepper to pinch his arm. Pepper pinched it doubtfully, and then saw the live broadcast of the brain screen. Suddenly, a part of it lit up. What is this? It's the primary somatosensory cortex. That's the part of the brain that feels pain. Then Killian explained the theoretical part of the extremis virus to Pepper in detail. Outside, when Happy saw Pepper and Killian standing so close to each other in the house, he almost wanted to rush in and separate them. Fortunately, at this time, Happy received a call from Tony. Tony. Oh, is this the big forehead security department? Tony saw Happy's big forehead on the screen and made a joke. What? Okay, listen, I have something to do now. Tony asked, what's going on? Harassing the interns. Happy said, you know, when I was Iron Man's bodyguard, everyone laughed at me, so I had to leave in disgrace. But now, I have a real job, which is to take care of Pepper. Hearing Happy say this, Tony asked, what happened? Tell me. Do you really want to listen? Correct. Well, she was meeting with a scientist, rich and handsome. I didn't recognize him at first, but then I looked him up and realized he was Aldrich Killian. Hearing Tony's lack of reaction, Happy knew that Tony had forgotten about him, so Happy continued, we actually met him before. We were at a conference in Switzerland in 1999. Tony sat down and prepared to pour some wine. I don't remember him. Of course, he's not a blonde girl. Happy retorted, at first they were just discussing business normally, but now it's a little strange. He's showing Pepper a model of the brain, and Pepper is enjoying it. What? This is real, do you want to see it? Happy raised the tablet in his hand, pressed the camera switch, and then showed Tony what the office looked like. But Tony didn't take it to heart and just told Happy to relax. However, Happy still insisted on his opinion that Killian had bad intentions this time. Then Tony hung up the phone on Happy. In the office, Killian was still showing and introducing the uses of the extremis virus to Pepper, but Pepper had a different opinion. What you said sounds like it can also be used in the military. Tony. Before Pepper could finish her words, Killian interrupted her, Tony. You know I invited him to join my company AIM more than 10 years ago, and he refused. Then Killian wanted to get Pepper's support, but now, another genius is in power. Killian pointed at Pepper, she is not as conceited as Tony. But Pepper still firmly rejected Killian, my answer is, no. Aldrich, I have helped you as much as I can. Then Pepper sent Killian out of the office. Before leaving, Killian still looked optimistic and said to Pepper, well, I'm a little disappointed. But, as my father said, through the fog of failure, you can always glimpse the glory of victory.